The story begins chapter 3 of the first volume. Misao tells someone that she has a boyfriend because a boy just confessed his feelings to her. She says that they will probably start dating very soon. Kaio is the head of his family, despite his father still being alive. He has brothers and experienced bullying when he was a child. Kaio asks if the boy who confessed is human, and Misao confirms that he is. Misao thinks about how Kaio is the leader of a Tengu tribe and only wants her as a bride to bring prosperity to his people. Kaio tells her that monsters will kill her if he leaves her alone. Misao asks if he only wants her because she is the bride of prosperity. Kaio replies that he already promised to protect her forever. Misao yells that she will never be a monster's bride and will only marry a human. She claims she is popular and mentions that a member of the tennis club confessed to her in the past. Kaio tells her that only two types of people would ever confess to her: the stupid or the possessed. He says that the tennis player was actually being possessed by a monster. Misao is shocked by this claim. Misao lands a hard slap across Kaio's face. Misao kicks Kaio and runs away while he is doubled over. Kaio remarks that she is too much for a normal human to handle. Misao worries about her situation, noting that while she does not want to die, she does not know how she can marry Kaio just for protection. Misao talks to Nagai at school. Nagai tells her that when he informed others about his confession, they called him brave. He explains that people take notice of the way she trips for no reason and stares into space. Misao realizes her classmates have misunderstood her behavior and think she is creepy or bad luck because she stares at monsters. She is relieved to realize that Nagai is not currently possessed. Nagai promises to protect Misao no matter what happens. Immediately after his promise, Misao trips and falls over. Nagai points out that she fell the moment he said he would protect her. Misao is bleeding from a wound on her head. She laughs and tells him that she just tripped. Misao notices that the number of monsters around them has increased. Nagai asks if she can stand up and she says she is fine. A cracking sound comes from the school building nearby. A window on an upper floor of the school building shatters into pieces. A dark liquid drips onto the pavement. Small flying monsters drop glass shards on Misao, leaving her covered in blood and dark fluid. Nagai yells out her name in horror as the glass continues to fall. Nagai panics as the number of monsters increases. He struggles to decide whether to take Misao to the hospital or the school nurse. At the school clinic, Misao briefly thinks that Kaio could heal her before shaking the thought away. The nurse tells her that her cuts do not need stitches, though the wounds on her chest and sides might leave scars. Nagai offers to walk her home to ensure her safety. Misao tells everyone she is okay, but Nagai notices her wobbling. Kaio walks past them, agreeing to discuss something later with another person. Kaio walks away and ignores Misao. Misao watches him go. Nagai asks Misao if she wants him to carry her. Misao changes her mind and asks him to walk her home, then jokingly asks if he can carry her in his arms. Nagai says he can. Misao laughs and tells Nagai she was just joking. Nagai insists on trying even though Misao says he can't do it. Kaio observes them from a distance. Misao thinks about how Kaio hasn't helped her today and probably won't any more. Nagai announces they have arrived at their destination, which Misao realizes is the school roof. Misao is confused why they are on the roof. Nagai explains that couples come here for privacy and notes that while students aren't allowed, the door is usually open. Misao apologizes and says she dislikes high places. Nagai tells Misao to look at the view of Mount Fuji, but she refuses. As Nagai points toward the horizon, monster hands grab Misao's bandaged hands on the railing. Dozens of monster hands reach over the edge of the building and grab Misao's body. The monsters pull Misao over the railing. Nagai is stunned as Misao screams and falls from the roof. Misao clings to the edge of the building and begs for help. Nagai tells her to hang on and says he will run to the floor below to catch her. Misao's injured hands slip and she falls toward the ground. Kaio flies in with his large black wings and catches Misao in the air. Misao looks up and says Kaio's name. Misao is shocked that Kaio actually came to save her. They descend through the air together. Misao looks at the ground far below and screams in terror. Misao begs Kaio not to let go because she is scared. Kaio asks why she keeps trying to make him angry and tells her she should hold on to him if she is frightened. Misao asks why he is doing this. Kaio tells Misao to hold on to him with all her strength. Misao continues to cry and begs him not to let her fall. Kaio pulls Misao into a hug and tells her he would never have let go. He explains that he only wanted to punish her a little bit. Kaio says he wanted Misao to learn that she cannot live without him. He lands safely on the ground while still holding her. Kaio carries Misao away. Misao thinks about how cold his voice sounds. Misao cries into her hands as Kaio carries her across the school grounds. Misao sleeps in her bed and thinks about how gentle Kaio's arms felt. In her sleep, Misao feels a presence and wonders who is there. Kaio looks down at her while she is in bed. Misao has a dream where Kaio is being intimate with her. She tells him to wait and not to continue while thinking about the nature of their relationship. Misao suddenly bolts upright in bed, wide awake. Misao breathes heavily and tries to process her dream. She wonders if she actually wants Kaio subconsciously and is shocked that she could dream such a thing. She looks at the bandages on her hands. Misao hears a tapping sound coming from outside her house. Misao shouts for Kaio as she goes to investigate the noise. Misao finds Kaio eating breakfast with some children. A child calls her a princess and offers her food. Misao wonders why they are all there. Misao demands to know why all of her wounds have suddenly healed. Kaio sips his drink and plays dumb about her injuries. Misao realizes that he is the only one capable of healing her like that. Kaio says he is going to change his clothes and asks if she wants to fly to school with him again. Misao refuses. Kaio tells Misao to eat the food a child made for her. Misao realizes her dream was actually real and that Kaio licked her body to heal her wounds. She apologizes to the child for saying she didn't want the food. While walking, Kaio tells Misao that he used to carry her and fly when they were children. He says she really enjoyed it back then. Misao states she remembers nothing about their past and finds his story hard to believe. Kaio looks at her with a serious expression. Kaio explains that they were separated for 10 years. He suggests she might have forgotten because he dropped her once and caused trauma. Misao reacts with annoyance at his suggestion. Kaio tells her that he has never forgotten the past for even a single day. The two of them a quiet moment as they look at one another. Kaio watches Misao with an intense gaze. Kaio blocks a sudden attack with his hand, leaving a bloody wound on his palm. Kaio shouts for Teru, who flies overhead carrying a wooden bucket. Teru responds and splashes water down onto the area. Kaio tells Teru he needs to work harder as the water evaporates into a large cloud of steam. Teru is saddened because he had actually wanted to water the plants. Kaio tells a trembling Misao not to be scared because the attack was not aimed at her. Misao is distressed that supernatural threats are happening again. Kaio demands that the intruder show themselves. A silver-haired boy in a school uniform steps out from behind the trees while Misao looks on in surprise. Misao notes that the stranger is handsome and has silver hair. Kaio identifies him as a fox monster. The stranger claims the fire attack was just a greeting and praises Kaio for stopping it with water before introducing himself to Misao. The boy introduces himself as Kuzunoha Shuhei. He looks directly at Misao and asks her to marry him. Misao is completely shocked by the sudden proposal while Kaio looks on with a serious expression. The story moves into chapter 4 of the first volume featuring Kaio and Shuhei standing with a blindfolded Misao. The story moves into chapter 4 of the first volume featuring Kaio and Shuhei standing alongside a blindfolded Misao. At school, Shuhei instantly becomes highly popular, turning heads as a handsome new exchange student as he plays basketball and greets Misao in the courtyard. Misao is startled when someone loudly calls out her name in the school corridor. Shuhei runs up to talk to Misao, but she tries to avoid drawing attention to herself. Kaio suddenly appears in his teacher disguise, demanding to know why Misao failed to meet him during lunchtime. The surrounding students swoon over the combined presence of the handsome teacher and the new exchange student, leaving Misao feeling incredibly self-conscious. Misao feels the intense jealousy of her classmates because she is flanked by the two most attractive guys in school. She laments the fact that her classmates do not know the truth about the two rivals who are actually a Tengu and a fox demon. Misao recalls that demons have hunted her since she turned 16, either wanting to marry her or consume her to obtain everlasting youth. Shuhei questions Kaio about why he holds so many private meetings with Misao, and Kaio replies that there is only one reason for it. Kaio holds up Misao's math test, revealing her terrible score of 14, and calls her dumb as she screams in embarrassment. Misao protests that she is only bad at math, while Shuhei mocks Kaio by suggesting he only became a math teacher out of perversion to exploit her weakness. Kaio orders Misao to follow him, leaving her to wonder if he deliberately chose his profession because he knew she struggled with the subject. Misao remembers the previous day when Shuhei suddenly proposed marriage to her during their very first meeting. Shuhei asks if they have already slept together, causing Misao to blush furiously and decline his marriage proposal. Misao declares that she refuses to marry a demon who only wants her to bring prosperity to his tribe, but Kaio warns her that she will die without a powerful demon's protection. Misao acknowledges the danger, but Shuhei reminds her that a Tengu like Kaio is not the only option available to protect her. Shuhei suggests that he could be the one to protect and marry her instead, leaving Misao completely stunned. Kaio points out that Shuhei is not actually the eldest son of his family, but Shuhei explains that he is the heir because he is stronger than his brother. Misao realizes that Kaio must also have an older brother and is saddened to realize how little she actually knows about him, despite being childhood friends. Misao reflects on her childhood memories of Kaio, thinking about how few she has, and why she treasures them so much. Misao blushes as she wonders if Kaio kept her in his heart, just as she did with him, or if he only values her as the bride of prosperity. Kaio notices Misao lingering in the hallway, asking what is wrong and telling her to come over to him. Misao looks back at Kaio with a highly conflicted and nervous expression. While walking home, Misao reflects on how her memories of Kaio are so sweet that she almost forgets he is a demon. She then spots a small boy sitting alone on a bench and asks if he is lost. The child suddenly transforms into a terrifying monster with black bleeding eyes clawing at Misao as she screams out for Kaio in sheer panic. Shuhei suddenly appears and blasts the monster away with a burst of energy, warning Misao that she needs to be more careful and avoid talking to strangers. Misao notices her leg is bleeding from a minor scratch. Shuhei admits that while he could easily heal her wound by licking it, he lacks the confidence to do so because he does not know if he can control himself around her. Shuhei explains that the scent of her blood is completely irresistible to demons, driving them to want to consume her and take her by force. Misao stands in silence, deeply unsettled by his chilling revelation. Shuhei adds that even simple physical contact like a hug or a kiss provides demons with massive energy, making it nearly impossible for anyone to maintain self-control once they have tasted her blood. Back at school, Misao nervously takes notes in her classroom while recalling Shuhei's warning to be extremely careful. Watching Kaio teach at the chalkboard, Misao reflects on how he has healed her multiple times without ever acting on those dangerous urges. Kaio continues his lesson, explaining a math formula to the class as Misao watches him. Although Misao tells herself Kaio behaves pervertedly and does not hold back, she is suddenly distracted by a painful twinge coming from her bandaged leg. Misao looks up in surprise as Kaio walks directly over to her desk. Kaio quietly orders Misao to stay after class. Misao notices the bandages on her leg and wonders about the persistent pain coming from the scratch. In the office, Kaio pulls back Misao's skirt to inspect the bandaged leg, causing her to cry out in pain and explain that a demon attacked her and Shuhei saved her. Misao cries out in pain as Kaio inspects her leg up close. Kaio tells Misao to try not to cry out because someone is coming down the hallway, while Misao winces and grips the desk tightly. Misao recalls Shuhei's warning about how irresistible her blood is to a demon as Kaio continues to tend to her leg. Misao continues to think about Shuhei's dark warnings regarding demon urges while Kaio stares up at her with a serious expression. Kaio suddenly stops and tells her that it is enough, turning to leave the room while a startled Misao stands up. Misao clutches her shirt in silence as she processes what just happened. Misao looks highly troubled and conflicted by Kaio's sudden withdrawal. Kaio slides the door shut as he leaves, looking exhausted and tense as he walks down the hall. Looking out the window, Misao realizes she would have been powerless to stop Kaio if he had chosen to force himself on her, and wonders if his restraint means he truly cares about her, before being startled by someone calling her name from outside. Shuhei greets Misao from outside, asking about her childhood friendship with Kaio and teasingly mentioning how she calls him by his first name. Shuhei leans on the window ledge, speaking quietly to Misao as she looks at him. Shuhei asks Misao if she really believes it is a pure coincidence that she and the head of a Tengu tribe are childhood friends. Misao is stunned as Shuhei questions whether her childhood relationship with Kaio was actually orchestrated rather than pure chance. Shuhei smiles as Teru suddenly calls out to Misao from nearby, interrupting their conversation. Teru runs up to Misao in a supermarket to thank her for some apples, while Misao nervously tells him it was no problem but begs him not to call her princess in public. Another Tengu named Jiro asks if a pre-made convenience store meal is her dinner, and when Misao admits she is too lazy to cook for herself tonight, Teru and Jiro eagerly invite her to join them for dinner, though she declines. Jiro bluntly tells Teru that Misao does not want to eat with them because she does not like terrace cooking, leaving Teru shocked. Jiro continues to tease Teru, saying Misao would rather eat a cheap microwave dinner than his food, which makes Teru tear up. As Jiro mocks Teru for being a crybaby and tells him to save his tears for seasoning, Misao quickly relents and agrees to go to dinner with them to stop Teru from crying. Under the starry night sky, Misao sits down with the Tengu family and thanks them for the meal. Jiro asks Misao if she is already heading home, and she thanks him while explaining that she is completely full and asking him to apologize to Teru for her. Jiro offers to walk Misao home, but she tells him not to worry since she lives right next door, only to be stopped when Kaio suddenly appears and calls her name. Kaio holds up Misao's bag, and she thanks him as he looks at her with a quiet, intense gaze. Kaio holds out the bag to return it to Misao, and she reaches out to take it from him. As Misao reaches for her bag, Kaio suddenly grabs her by the wrist. Misao looks up at him in complete shock. Kaio pulls Misao into a sudden tight embrace as they stand in the hallway. Kaio whispers her name, while Shuhei's earlier warning about their meeting not being a coincidence echoes in Misao's mind. Overwhelmed by doubt, Misao forcefully pushes Kaio away from her. Misao continues to recall Shuhei's warnings that Kaio likely planned everything out from the start just to force her into a marriage later on. Kaio stands in silence, watching Misao with a somber expression. Shuhei's whispered claims about Kaio using cruel, underhanded methods to secure his position and manipulate her childhood memories continue to plague Misao's thoughts. Misao bitterly wonders if she was the only one who truly treasured their childhood memories. Tears stream down Misao's face as she struggles with the painful thought of being deceived. Misao turns and runs away in tears, crying over how much she missed her first love during their 10 years apart, while Kaio watches her go and calls out her name. Misao recalls asking Kaio if he ever thought about her during their decade apart, and remembers his devastating reply that he had not thought of her even once. Misao remembers telling Kaio how annoying it is when he brings up the past, declaring that she would rather die than marry someone like him. Misao tearfully accepts the painful conclusion that Kaio does not actually love her. Running home through the dark, Misao questions why she cannot stop crying even though she should have expected this outcome. Sitting alone by a circular window at night, Kaio sighs to himself about how irritating the situation is. Kaio quietly resolves that maybe he should eliminate Shuhei first as Misao cries in distress. The story moves into chapter 5 of the first volume, featuring Kaio standing among white flowers. Misao reflects on her childhood, recalling that, although she does not remember much, she really liked Kaio when she was small. Misao sits at her desk at school, looking completely lost in thought and depressed. Misao remembers crying intensely when she and Kaio were separated as children, completely unaware at the time of her destiny as the bride whose blood could prolong a demon's life and bring prosperity to his tribe. Misao recalls her genuine affection for Kaio during their childhood years. Misao remains deep in her melancholy thoughts in the classroom when she hears the classroom door click open. Misao continues to hear Shuhei's warnings about Kaio echoing in her mind. Kaio enters the classroom and stands before Misao, who keeps her head down and refuses to look up at him. Shuhei's voice continues to echo in Misao's thoughts, telling her that Kaio was ambitious enough to manipulate her childhood memories to become the head of his tribe. Kaio continues teaching class and calls on students to solve math problems on the board, while Misao sits in silence, feeling deeply hurt by the realization that Kaio only views her as a tool. Kaio calls on Misao by her attendance number to solve a problem on the board, but she remains frozen at her desk, privately berating herself for foolishly falling in love with him. Shuhei walks up to Kaio and quietly whispers that Misao seems to thoroughly detest him now. Shuhei mockingly asks Kaio how long he plans to pretend to be calm, admitting that he told Misao the truth about his identity and knows Kaio is terrified of losing her. Kaio quietly mutters Shuhei's family name under his breath while Shuhei dares him to speak up. Misao drinks juice outside the classroom to get away while Shuhei's presence continues to draw attention as Kaio tells him he does not belong in their classroom. Shuhei suddenly runs up to Misao and cheerfully shouts her name, causing her to spit out her drink in surprise. As Misao coughs, Shuhei casually remarks that he always gets excited whenever he sees his future wife, while Misao reacts with frustration at the thought of marrying any monster. Shuhei leans in close to remark on a drop of juice on Misao's lip, making her scream in alarm, and demand to know if he is trying to steal her energy, to which he replies that it was only a joke. Shuhei explains that demons only receive energy without depleting her own, before mockingly asking if she is refusing because she only wants to be kissed by Kaio. Misao is left speechless and deeply flustered by Shuhei's question. Misao insists that it is not true, but Shuhei points out that she has been visibly depressed ever since he told her about Kaio's true motivations. Shuhei leans in close and coldly asks Misao if she would mind if he killed Kaio. Misao shivers in terror at the word, realizing with dread that they might actually fight to the death over her. Shuhei tells Misao that Kaio would probably give up on her rather than risk his own life, leaving Misao to quietly wonder if Kaio really would abandon her to save himself. Shuhei suddenly pins Misao against the wall, but she reacts by kicking and pushing him away to break free. Shuhei grabs Misao's wrists and firmly tells her that he is not going to wait for her feelings to change, warning her that he will claim her once he eliminates Kaio. Kaio suddenly intervenes, landing a powerful blow that knocks Shuhei backward. Misao cries out Kaio's name as he stands protectively in front of her, while Shuhei gets back on his feet and eagerly challenges Kaio to settle their dispute right then and there. Shuhei declares that he will not hold back while Kaio glares back in silent agreement, preparing to fight as Misao watches in terror. Kaio suddenly turns his head as if looking for someone, while Misao watches with a shocked expression. Misao is stunned when she hears a loud impact and sees blood splatter onto the school roof nearby. Misao looks on in complete horror as blood splatters directly across her face. Kaio intercepts Shuhei's attack to shield Misao, taking a massive bloody wound to his neck and chest as Misao screams his name. Shuhei remarks that he knew Kaio would sacrifice himself because the attack was aimed directly at Misao. Gritting his teeth in severe pain and anger, Kaio declares to Shuhei that he is going to kill him. As Kaio walks away bleeding heavily, Misao tearfully demands to know why he protected her if she is only a tool to him, to which Kaio quietly replies that it does not matter how much she hates him. Kaio firmly declares that he will protect her and will never hand her over to anyone else. A teacher suddenly opens a window and shouts at them for lingering outside after the bell has rung, causing Shuhei to note how much attention they are drawing. Misao watches in distress as Kaio turns and flies away, while Shuhei offers to look at her injuries and notes that the conflict is finished for now. Back in the classroom, Misao worries if Kaio is okay, while her classmates whisper about how strange it is that both Shuhei and Kaio are absent from class. Fearing that Kaio and Shuhei might still be fighting, Misao runs outside while desperately trying to convince herself that Kaio would not fight to the death. Misao gasps in relief as black feathers fall from the sky and she spots Kaio flying overhead. Misao watches Kaio land on a high tiled roof and nervously worries that someone might see him flying. As soon as Kaio lands, his strength gives out and he collapses onto the roof, clutching his heavily bleeding neck. Misao climbs onto the roof and panics at the massive amount of blood, desperately asking Kaio if he has a knife she can use to cut herself to heal him, or where Teru is. Since Teru is away, Misao decides to bite her own arm to draw blood, telling Kaio that she is paying him back for saving her, and asking if drinking her blood will heal him. Kaio forcefully grabs Misao's arm to stop her, commanding her not to hurt herself. Kaio weakly calls her stupid for trying to harm herself when she is already injured, while a crying Misao demands to know why he took such a massive wound for her sake. Misao cries out, demanding to know why Kaio protected her, and why he cares if she dies, but Kaio weakly looks at her and replies that even if she is the bride of prosperity for his clan, his life, and everything else would have absolutely no meaning if she were to die. Misao is deeply shocked as Kaio places his bloody hand on her cheek and repeats that if he does not have her by his side, nothing else matters. Kaio weakly collapses back onto the roof, closing his eyes as he gasps out that there is simply no meaning in living without her. Misao stares at him in horror and disbelief, suddenly realizing that if he dies here, he will never touch her or be near her again. She holds Kaio's limp hand, panicking as his long fingers grow colder by the second, and desperately calls out his childhood name. Misao's mind flashes back to their childhood separation, remembering how she had wept and begged him not to leave when he promised he would return for her someday, and she desperately begs him not to leave her again. Driven by her feelings and the desperate urge to save him, Misao leans down over Kaio's limp body and kisses him deeply. Misao frantically begs him to open his eyes, recalling Shuhei's explanation that simple physical contact like a kiss can give a demon immense energy. Realizing that a simple kiss is not enough to revive his fading life, Misao feels a sense of dread. Kaio's eyes suddenly flutter open, and Misao looks at him in surprise as he weakly calls her name. Kaio wraps his arm around Misao and pulls her down into a passionate kiss, surprising her completely. Misao gasps against his lips as Kaio holds her tightly, whispering that the way she kissed him reveals her true feelings. Kaio continues to kiss her as they lie on the roof, murmuring that she clearly loves him. Misao tries to protest, stammering that she cannot do this when they suddenly hear footsteps running toward them. Teru bursts onto the roof holding a bag of medicine, happily shouting that Kaio will be completely fine by tomorrow morning now that the secret medicine is ready. Teru freezes in absolute shock as Kaio glares back over his shoulder at the sudden interruption. Teru quickly shuts the door and runs away, loudly apologizing for intruding on their intimate moment. Kaio casually turns back to Misao with a smug smile and suggests that they continue where they left off, which makes Misao fume with anger. A loud, angry shout from Misao echoes from the building into the quiet courtyard. Teru cries in terror that Misao is going to kill Kaio, while Misao furiously scolds Kaio for tricking her into thinking he was dying, though Kaio defends himself by pointing out that he never claimed to be dying, before angrily ordering Teru to sit in the corner as punishment for interrupting. Kaio remarks that his injury was entirely worth it and tells Misao she does not need to prepare for bridehood, but should just come to him, while Misao blushes in embarrassment, privately mortified that she cried so much thinking he was going to die. Kaio asks Misao if she called him by his childhood nickname during her panic, leaving her speechless. Kaio asks her if she finally remembers their past together. Kaio admits he is surprised she forgot he was a Tengu, even if she was very small, as Misao silently recalls his childhood promise that he had to leave to do something. Misao wonders about his past departure, but Kaio calls her name to get her attention. Kaio explains that, because of his fight with Shuhei, all the demons across Japan have now discovered her whereabouts. Kaio warns her that those demons are now heading their way, telling her she must accept her destiny and belong to him for protection. Misao silently absorbs Kaio's warning, looking highly conflicted about her perilous situation. Kaio points out that thunder is coming and a storm is brewing, while Misao sits beside him, feeling that she has already been captured by his hand. The story enters the second volume as Misao ponders whose hands her fate will fall into, knowing her blood, flesh, and hand in marriage are coveted by all demons. Volume 2, Chapter 1 begins with Kaio holding Misao closely as cherry blossom petals fall around them. Misao reflects on how she used to visit the house next door to play almost every day when she was small, completely unaware at the time that it was a house of Tengu. She opens the wooden sliding door, stepping inside. Misao watches her childhood friend and first love Kaio, who returned to the temple after becoming the head of his family. Misao notes that Kaio has returned with the sole desire to make her his wife. Misao blushes and thinks about how Kaio is still so beautifully scary, before nervously asking if Teru is around, prompting Kaio to point toward the roof where Teru is calling out to him. Both of them look up as they hear wings flapping in the sky. Misao is startled to see a flock of black-winged tengu flying directly toward them. 5 handsome tengu descend from the sky and land in the yard, and Kaio introduces them to a stunned Misao as his personal retainers. Kaio lists off their names: Sagami, Hauki, Buzan, Zenki, Gyro, and Saburo. As they bow and state they have arrived as summoned, leaving Misao completely astounded that such a handsome group of guys are Kaio's servants. Misao is deeply impressed to see that Kaio really acts like the head of his family, while Sagami points out that one of their members is still missing, and Kaio replies that he will arrive later as usual. Suddenly, the 2 youngest retainers happily leap onto Kaio, screaming that they have missed him. Misao smiles at how cute the children are as they playfully bicker over hugging Kaio, while the other retainers try to pull them away so they do not suffocate him. The other retainers kneel before Kaio to pay their respects as the group's arrival is finalized. Misao gets incredibly flustered by their overly dramatic host-like attention, while Kaio and the retainers begin bickering over her, and Kaio's recent kiss prompting Misao to frantically tell Kaio not to discuss such embarrassing things in public. Kaio pulls Misao in close, boldly whispering that he will kiss her whenever he wants, regardless of who is watching, which makes her scream in embarrassment, while the retainers casually ignore him and continue inviting her out for gelato. Misao politely declines the retainers' invitation for gelato, suggesting they go another time, and angrily tells Kaio not to follow her before running out of the temple gates. Misao blushes as she admits to herself that she has been hopelessly drawn to Kaio ever since their passionate kiss on the roof. However, she remains highly insecure, questioning whether Kaio only risked his life for her because of her status as the bride of prosperity, or if he genuinely loves her. Misao breathes heavily as she walks, trying to calm her racing heart. Overwhelmed by confusion and frustration, Misao clutches her head in her hands, while Kaio sits back in his room looking deep in thought. Inside the temple, the 8 great Tengu hold a meeting with Kaio, discussing how Shuhei of the Kuzunoha clan fled after their battle, and asking Kaio if they should pursue him or continue to lie low and observe. As Kaio sits in silent contemplation, Buzan suggests that Kaio should go follow Misao instead, which earns him a sharp scolding from Sagami. Kaio continues to look incredibly sullen and quiet, prompting Sagami to tell him that if he is going to look that miserable, he might as well go follow her. Walking through a crowded street, Misao notes that she is used to seeing stinking monsters that other people cannot, tolerating their annoying pranks even when they hurt. She recalls that since turning 16, demons have constantly tried to kill her to obtain immortality, making her realize why Teru was so protective and wanted to accompany her. Misao suddenly feels terribly dizzy and sick, prompting a kind-looking stranger in a coat to ask if she is okay, since she looks incredibly pale. Misao gasps in shock when she looks up and realizes the stranger looks exactly like Kaio, while the man remarks that it is only natural she feels sick given how many invisible spirits are currently clinging to her. Misao is stunned to realize the stranger can actually see the spirits when he casually waves them away, and she is left with endless questions as the man bids her goodbye and walks away. The stranger turns back with a gentle smile and tells her to be careful. Misao watches the mysterious man disappear into the busy crowd, still deeply confused by his uncanny resemblance to Kaio. Suddenly, Misao hears people screaming in panic from a nearby crowd. She turns to see a chaotic scene as a man brandishing a knife begins attacking people in the street, causing the terrified crowd to scatter in a panic. Realizing that the attacker is actually being possessed by a demon, Misao tries to flee but is cornered and knocked to the ground as the possessed man lunges directly at her. Misao screams in terror as the attacker swings the knife down toward her. Kaio suddenly appears, blocking the strike with his arm and sending the knife clattering away, and he admits to a shocked Misao that he was so worried about her being on her own that he could not concentrate on a single damn thing. Kaio pulls Misao to her feet and commands her to prepare herself, declaring that he will never let her out of his sight again, even if she hates it, while onlookers marvel at how easily he defeated the attacker. Kaio gently pats Misao on the back as he walks her away from the scene. When Kaio asks who she was with, Misao explains that she met a stranger who looked exactly like him, and who was also able to see monsters. Misao explains that she was alone, but that the stranger was incredibly nice to her, before leaving without even sharing his name, prompting Kaio to look highly serious. Kaio remains silently annoyed as Misao contrasts the stranger's gentle, gentlemanly manners with Kaio's own perverted behavior, while the police arrest the attacker in the background. Kaio looks out over the city skyline, quietly muttering that the situation has become a total nuisance. Onlookers on the street turn their heads in surprise to stare at them as they walk by. Kaio stands out immensely in public, drawing whispers from the crowd about his height and model-like appearance as he walks with Misao. Misao feels dejected when she overhears a bystander assume she must be Kaio's young manager rather than his partner, while Kaio smiles knowingly beside her. Kaio points out that this is their first time walking together like this, and offers to hold hands, telling her she should occasionally listen to him. Kaio complains that he had a dream about her, but she still refuses to cooperate. Misao looks at him, thinking that she would throw herself into his arms without a second thought, if only she could confirm that he truly loves her. Kaio orders Misao to stay exactly where she is and not run away, while he briefly steps away to get something. Kaio returns and hands her a 2-scoop ice cream cone, explaining that while it is not the gelato she wanted, it should suffice only for a scoop of ice cream to suddenly fall off. Kaio catches the falling scoop of ice cream directly on his hand and stares at it thoughtfully. Kaio holds the fallen scoop of ice cream in his hand as Misao watches him. Kaio holds his ice cream covered finger to Misao's lips, and she hesitantly licks the sweet treat off his skin. Misao blushes furiously as she licks the ice cream from his hand under Kaio's intense, steady gaze. Kaio asks her if it is good and leans in close to her face, pointing out that there is still some ice cream left on her lip. Kaio leans down and kisses her lip to lick away the remaining ice cream. Kaio spits out the ice cream in disgust, complaining that it is far too sweet, while Misao blushes and tells him to stop. Misao covers her face in deep embarrassment, while onlookers watch them in shock. Misao turns away, blushing at the thought of Kaio doing such things in front of other people, while Kaio smiles smugly. Kaio reaches out and playfully taps Misao on her forehead to snap her out of her thoughts. As they walk away, Kaio offers to buy her another ice cream, while Misao thanks him and quietly wonders if he does these things because he genuinely loves her. Upon returning to the temple, the retainers welcome them back, but immediately begin reading Kaio's secret photo album, prompting Kaio to scold them before leaving to change his clothes. Misao screams Kaio's name in pure rage when she looks at the open album, and discovers that Kaio has secretly taken highly private photos of her and written creepy notes about her. As Misao attacks Kaio in the background, the retainers laugh and explain to Misao that Kaio loves her so much he cannot contain it, adding that he even became the family head solely for her sake. Misao stares in complete shock as she absorbs this revelation. Misao turns to the retainers, urgently demanding to know what they mean by that statement. Sagami explains to Misao that only the head of a family has the right to marry the bride of prosperity. Sagami continues, explaining that if anyone wanted to have Misao as his wife, his only choice would be to become the head of his family first in order to maintain control over his clan. Misao listens in stunned silence as she begins to piece together Kaio's motivations. Kaio suddenly slides the door open and calls out her name, interrupting the conversation. Kaio notices a cut on Misao's lip from her earlier fall and insists on healing it immediately, despite her protests that he does not need to do so. Kaio gently grabs her chin and leans in close, ignoring her protests by stating that it is fine to lick her lip as long as they are alone. Kaio kisses her lip to heal the cut, while the retainer's words about Kaio becoming the head of the family solely for her sake echo in her mind. As Kaio kisses her, Misao silently wonders if he truly loves her, and if that is the real reason he undertook such a difficult path. Kaio holds Misao close as they a deep, quiet kiss by the window. As Misao and Kaio bicker over the forced kiss, a retainer interrupts to report that Saoju Dono has arrived, prompting Kaio to look highly serious and prepare to meet the visitor. A child rushes in to announce the guest's arrival while the visitor walks off and casually invites Kaio to join them. Kaio watches in silence, asking who the stranger is. The visitor reveals that he has his own retainer, who is also one of the 8 great Tengu, confirming that he possesses the same status and allies as Kaio. Misao is shocked to realize that the visitor is the very same kind stranger she met on the street earlier, while Kaio explains that the man would be the head of the family, if not for Kaio himself. Kaio officially introduces the man as his older brother, who turns back with a calm, confident smile. Misao is frozen in disbelief, as she tries to process the fact that this man is Kaio's older brother, while the brother looks at her and asks if she is Kaio's princess. A young girl with brown hair wears headphones and a casual green shirt, marking the transition to the next part of the series, with a list of the production staff. A man in a black kimono leans over a woman lying on the ground, pinning her arms above her head in a quiet, intense moment. The man in the kimono looks off to the side with a serious expression, while a maple leaf drifts in the background. Kaio stands alongside his 8 Tengu retainers, including his brother, who was originally intended to lead the family. The artist sits at a desk, apologizing for previous delays and noting the effort put into the current volume's cover page. Misao looks thoughtful as she reflects on the fact that Kaio must have worked incredibly hard to become the head of his family. She considers the possibility that Kaio struggled to reach his position, specifically because he needed to be the family head in order to marry her, finding the situation unexpectedly complicated. Misao wonders if Kaio truly likes her, while he stands nearby looking contemplative and resting a hand on his chin. Misao screams in terror when she notices a spider on her back, while Kaio remains calm, remarking that spiders are actually considered gods. Misao cries out for Kaio, demanding that he take off his clothes so she can get away from the spider. Kaio grabs Misao and pulls her close, telling her to stop moving and asking if she is worried the spider might be poisonous. As the spider crawls further down, Misao desperately tells Kaio not to put his hand in there. Kaio presses Misao against him, ignoring her protests that someone might see them, while reflecting on the recent change in his temper since his brother arrived. Kaio's brother explains that he and Kaio lived in the same house 10 years ago, but Misao admits she cannot recall much of her childhood or her memories of Kaio. Kaio's brother acknowledges her statement with a calm smile as Misao looks at him. Kaio bluntly tells Misao to stop talking to his brother and orders his retainers to start walking her home from school every day. Kaio leans in close to Misao and asks if she wants him to keep her mouth busy. Kaio pulls Misao into his arms, taunting her about wanting to escape and asking why she was so much more obliging the last time they were together. Kaio firmly tilts Misao's head up as she thinks that if he truly likes her, she has no reason to reject him. Kaio presses himself against Misao, and she realizes with shock that he is becoming physically aroused. A small retainer cries and begs Misao to come home and play with them today, while Misao sighs that he would be cool if not for his persistent behavior. The retainers tell Misao that Kaio is the only one who allows them to fool around, and reveal that he has taken the underachieving retainer under his wing, leaving Misao to realize how gentle Kaio actually is. The small retainer declares that he loves Kaio most of all, and will do anything to please him. The retainer continues to beg Misao to come play, while she walks away, noting that he is acting under Kaio's direct orders. Kaio's brother offers cake to Misao, mentioning he baked it himself, while Misao asks why he didn't go out to play with the others. Misao wonders if his brother truly hates Kaio, prompting him to ask why she is suddenly curious about his thoughts. Kaio's brother smiles at Misao as they converse. Misao thinks he doesn't seem like a bad guy, though she wonders if they are really brothers given his maturity, while he asks how Kaio is doing and tells her he has long since moved on, so she has no reason to be wary of him. The brother asks if the lower Tengu has been tamed yet, while Misao, holding the cake, reacts with surprise. Kaio's eyes narrow as he observes the interaction from the doorway. Misao reaches out toward the door, feeling the tension in the room. Kaio's fingers grip a surface tightly in frustration. Kaio places a hand on Misao's shoulder as a snake appears behind her. Kaio slams his fist against the wall, startling Misao. Misao nervously asks Kaio if he is back while he glares at her and his brother. Kaio confronts Misao about why she is still near his brother and demands she go change out of her clothes while she flusteredly insists she will go make tea. Kaio warns his brother not to do anything to Misao. Kaio's brother tells Kaio not to act dumb and mentions the spider. Kaio's brother remarks that communicating with insects is Kaio's trump card, while Kaio replies with a calm acknowledgement. A group of men discuss how tiring it is to bring children to a theme park, noting that the people from the west of Japan didn't show up. One of the men expresses that he is still unable to forgive what Kaio did to Teru and his brothers, even though they ties to the main family. The men continue their discussion while the smaller children walk past them. Misao holds a teapot and remarks that the past is already behind them. Misao asks where Saju-san is, and she is told that he went back to his room. Misao looks surprised when she learns that Saju-san does not like desserts, noting that he did not even take a single bite of the cake. Kaio asks if Misao made the cake, and when she confirms it, he tells her that it is really great. Misao worries that she was too careless, wondering if Kaio hates sweet things, as he complains that the cake is too sweet. Kaio looks at Misao with a steady gaze. Misao stares back at Kaio as he watches her. Misao asks Kaio what is wrong, and he offers to listen if she wants to talk, but she insists that it is nothing. Misao stares at Kaio and asks him if he likes her. Misao covers her face and exclaims that she was too frank again, questioning why she would want him to marry her if he does not reciprocate. Misao winces in pain as Kaio pulls her hair while he tells her he heard that she was the reason his brother tried to get near her. Misao tells Kaio to stop it already. Kaio reaches out toward Misao. Kaio pulls Misao into an embrace, asking her if she is an idiot. Misao blushes deeply as she looks at Kaio. Kaio cups Misao's face in his hands, telling her that he has only been thinking about her all these years, leaving Misao to wonder why she cannot recall their past. Misao wishes she could remember their childhood together, so she would not have to doubt Kaio's sincerity, and she asks him how he feels about her. Kaio tells Misao that she does not need to talk, and says he will take matters into his own hands if she does not like it. Kaio leans in to kiss Misao, telling her to reject him if she wants to stop. Kaio kisses Misao while she grips his clothes tightly. Kaio continues to kiss Misao as she reflects on her wish for their relationship to become something more. Saju-san kneels by the water, and when Misao asks if he is leaving already, he acknowledges her presence while she looks on. Misao blushes deeply, causing Saju-san to ask why her face is so red, while Kaio glares in the background, and the retainers whisper to each other to pretend they didn't see anything. Saju-san shows Misao a hair tie he found, and she happily recognizes it as a nostalgic item a friend gave her in kindergarten, though she had believed it was lost. Saju-san remarks that it is strange for her to recall such memories, while she forgets everything about their deep past. Misao wonders if she did not simply forget, considering there might be other reasons for her memory loss. Saju-san suggests that if her memories were deliberately sealed, there are methods to release them, and he invites her to drop by the house tomorrow if she is willing to try. The retainers discuss how no one saw the princess after she left school, confirming she headed straight toward their house. A retainer notes that in addition to the princess being missing, his brother has also vanished without a trace. The retainer adds that Saju-dan is missing as well. Kaio looks out over the landscape at night, ordering everyone to hurry up and search to find Misao. Misao lies unconscious on the ground as drops of water fall nearby. A small retainer lies sleeping on the ground beside Misao, who wonders where she is. A voice tells Misao that whoever sleeps with the head of the family gets to sleep with her, implying that it is the same thing. Saju-san holds an unconscious Misao in his arms and tells her they should enjoy themselves. Saju-san holds a frail-looking Misao close, embracing her, while she rests against him. Misao feels disoriented, remembering how she went next door after school and then felt a sudden shift while Saju-san speaks to her. Saju-san touches Misao's face, asking if she feels hot and noting that her body is numb. The retainers express their frustration and fatigue over the current situation. Saju-san smiles as he explains that the effects of his insect poison will last for a while. Saju-san reveals he has strengthened the barrier of the house to ensure they remain undiscovered, while Misao remains tied up and distressed, asking why he is doing this. Saju-san whispers that he is doing this in order to slowly have sex with her, while Misao cries out for him to stop. Saju-san claims that Kaio had an unrequited love for Misao and forced his way to becoming the head of the family, tearing them apart and causing a disaster. Saju-san taunts Misao, asking if she truly forgot how she always called him by his nickname and stayed attached to him. Saju-san looks down at Misao with a sharp expression as she tells him to stop. A small retainer falls to the ground while Misao remains tied up. The young retainer cries out for Teru in distress. Saju-san tells the retainer he will not forgive any interference in his plans, despite the retainer pleading for him to stop. Saju-san asks the retainer if he has become stronger after his training with Kaio, then taunts the crying child, noting that he hasn't even done anything to him yet. Kaio confronts Saju, demanding that he release Teru and Misao. Saju-san watches as the young retainer struggles on the ground. Misao calls out for Kaio in tears. Saju-san asks Kaio if he is willing to help Misao, noting that she wants to regain her memories. Kaio is suddenly struck by a powerful force, causing blood to spray everywhere, while Misao watches in horror. Misao screams in denial as she witnesses the violence. Misao continues to scream for Kaio, while Saju-san stands behind her and tells her to look at what has happened. Misao stares in shock at Kaio, who stands injured and bleeding. Flashes of the past return to Misao, and she realizes exactly what happened during their childhood and how her memories were suppressed. Misao realizes that Saju-san is the one who locked away her memories, while he instructs her that she must look at the bleeding Kaio if she wants to fully unlock the seal. Saju explains to Misao that the seal on her memories will fully break when Kaio dies. He notes his surprise that she retained fragments of her past, even though he clearly sealed all of her memories about Kaio, and then casually announces his intention to cut off Kaio's arm next. Misao frantically screams for him to stop and calls him a liar. Crying over Kaio's bleeding body, she insists that the past promise was a lie and tearfully declares to Saju that she was never attached to him. Misao firmly declares that she never liked him at all. Kaio then speaks up, expressing his confusion, as he reminds Shu of the time he nearly killed the two Teru brothers under the guise of training. Kaio explains that this cruel incident caused the other courtiers to turn away, costing Shu the position of family head, and adds that even Misao saw right through his toxic personality. Infuriated, Shu yells Kaio's name and insists he is obviously superior, since Kaio could not even break his barrier. Shu mocks Kaio's unrequited love as an impossibility and expresses his disgust over Kaio falling for what he considers mere monster food. Calling them trash, Shu reveals his twisted plan to violate Misao in front of Kaio before killing and eating her, believing it would bring him unparalleled pleasure. Kaio sharply calls out his brother's name in a tense warning. Shu dismissively tells Kaio not to worry, taunting that Kaio's severe injuries will prevent him from seeing the end of the ordeal anyway. Misao tearfully cries out Kaio's name, terrified that he will die if the violence continues. Kaio remains heavily injured and bleeding as Teru crawls on the ground, weeping and begging for someone to save him. Misao screams for the violence to stop as she watches the gruesome scene unfold. Misao continues to cry out for Kaio and Teru while Shu holds her captive. During the struggle, Misao's long hair is caught or grabbed, leading to it being severed as she is pulled away. A dark, blood-spattered void fills the air as someone weakly whispers Misao's name, signifying the dire state of the conflict. In a flashback to their childhood, Misao cries after other children bully her for claiming monsters are real. A young Kaio approaches her with a lost ball, noting that the temple gates were open and asking why she is so strange. Young Misao is overjoyed when Kaio validates her by confirming that monsters do exist. She happily introduces herself and asks for his name, to which he replies that he is Kaiowu. Kaiowu finds the young girl annoying and tries to brush her off so he can study, explaining that Tengu cannot spend all day playing like humans. Despite his irritation, Misao remains persistent and begs him to play with her once he is finished. A stack of academic books sits on a desk, representing the heavy burden of study Kaiowu undertook to prepare for his future role. Kyowu notices that it has started raining and is shocked to find Misao still sitting outside his window in the downpour. She smiles brightly at him, asking if he has finally finished his studying so they can play. Misao presents Kyowu with a meatball made of mud, and he is so caught off guard that he actually takes a bite before spitting it out. When she mentions giving one to Shu as well, Kyowu's expression hardens as he reflects on her status as Shu's fiancé. Kyowu angrily tells Misao to stop following him and to go talk to Shu instead. A distressed Misao begs him not to hate her, eventually asking if Shu refused the mud meatball because he didn't want his hands to get dirty. As Kyowu watches a sleeping Misao, he questions how he can protect someone so small and weak. His grandfather observes that Misao clearly prefers Kyowu's company even though she is intended for Shu. Driven by his desire to protect her young, Kyowu resolves to become the head of the family. He vows to eventually return for Misao because he has decided she will be his bride. Returning to the present, a bloodied and exhausted Kyo holds an unconscious Misao in his arms, his body showing the severe toll of the recent battle. Shu laughs at Kyo's weakened state, noting that he exhausted all his energy just to break through the barrier. He gloats that the fight is over as Kyo struggles to stay standing. The situation shifts instantly as Kyo's retainers arrive and surround Shu. They physically restrain him, preventing any further violence. One of the retainers firmly tells Shu to give up his struggle. Shu is visibly shaken, his composure crumbling as he realizes he has been cornered by Kyo's loyal servants. Zenki demands that Shu stop his actions immediately. In the background, Shu's own allies or retainers call out in shock as the situation is brought under control. Despite his severe injuries and the blood dripping from his mouth, Kyo commands everyone to stop. Misao regains consciousness and tries to reassure Kyo that she is fine. A retainer expresses horror at her severed hair, and it is explained that Teru had no choice but to cut it off to free her during the earlier struggle. Kyo watches with a grim, silent expression as the group prepares to leave the scene. The younger Tengu children rush to Kyo's side, and an adult instructs one of them to go look after their injured older brother. Misao watches Kyo intently as he reaches out and gently cups her face. They a deep, quiet kiss amidst the trees, finally reuniting after the chaotic struggle. Kyo continues to embrace Misao while kissing her, asking if she still wants to continue their intimacy. Misao confirms that she does, though Kyo tells her that simple physical contact is not enough to satisfy him. Misao checks on Kyo's injuries, asking if the heavy bleeding has finally stopped. Kyo confirms that he is healing as a stray leaf drifts to the ground nearby. Misao looks at a small object in her hand and turns to speak with Kyo as they settle after the battle. Kyo shouts at Misao and calls her an idiot for putting herself in danger, while she tearfully apologizes over and over again. She explains that she was desperate to recover the childhood memories, they no matter the cost. Kyo looks away, explaining that Shu will likely never release the seal on her memories, meaning they might be gone for the rest of her life. Misao quietly accepts this reality, acknowledging that her past might remain a mystery. Misao realizes that the missing pieces of her past do not actually matter to her anymore. Thinking back to their time together as children, Misao tells Kyo that being unable to remember doesn't change anything. Kyo watches her in surprise as she prepares to explain her true feelings. Misao blushes deeply and looks directly at Kyo, declaring that she already loves the version of him standing right in front of her. Kyo stares at Misao with wide, shocked eyes, completely caught off guard by her honest confession of love. Overcome with emotion, Kyo looks down, silently processing Misao's words. Kyo pulls Misao into a warm embrace and smiles gently at her. Misao feels a sense of profound relief as she rests against him. Kyo holds Misao tightly, whispering that he has dreamed of the day he could finally embrace her again. He tells her she has finally come back to him as she listens with tears in her eyes. Misao reflects on how Kyo's constant love saved her from a terrible fate, and realizes how happy she is that he never gave up on her. She tells him she likes him the most. Misao worries about Kyo's wounds and asks if they hurt, but he jokingly tells her he is in so much pain that he might die and demands she cure him. Misao scolds him for teasing her during such a serious moment. Misao feels that she will never escape the sweet cage of Kaio's love that now imprisons her. Nearby, one of Kaio's retainers observes the couple and decides that it is time for the group to leave. Zenki and another retainer discuss how their master is far too kind-hearted. They express concern that Shu will surely strike again because Kaio chose only to imprison him rather than take more permanent action. The retainers conclude that Kaio's guilt over taking the headship from his brother makes him willing to accept any attack. They acknowledge that despite everything, the two are still blood brothers and Kaio is their master. One retainer wonders if this mercy will eventually cause more trouble for them in the future, and the other agrees that it likely will. Retainers note how Kaio's obsession with Misao is clear, while one simply agrees with the observation. Back at the temple, Misao tells Kaio she has fully recovered, while secretly thinking about how intense his obsession with her has become. Kaio expresses concern over Misao's severed hair, but she smiles and tells him it will grow back quickly. Misao asks Kaio to tell her about the important matter he wanted to discuss earlier. Kaio leads Misao into a room, sliding the door open to reveal a space he has specially prepared for them. Inside the room, futons are laid out alongside erotic artwork and books signaling Kaio's intimate intentions for the night. Kaio starts to undress Misao and suggests they a meal of red bean porridge as she grows increasingly nervous. Misao's angry shouts carry through the building as she calls Kaio a perverted tengu and hits him for his forward behavior. Chapter 4 begins with the retainers gathered together under a tree calmly smoking their pipes. Back at school, Kaio wears glasses and remarks with surprise that Misao's hair seems to have grown out remarkably fast. Misao explains she got hair extensions to surprise him because he always looked so sad when he saw her short hair, though Kaio insists the fault was his for letting her get hurt. Misao reflects that seeing Kaio's concern for her makes her feel like she can never be hurt again. Kaio takes off his glasses and leans in to kiss Misao by the school window. Misao blushes deeply as they a quiet romantic kiss. Misao hides her face in embarrassment, stammering that it was just a kiss, while Kaio asks if she is still feeling unwell. Kaio pulls Misao close and promises that while their past kisses were mostly for healing her injuries, he intends for them to many more romantic ones in the future. Misao stands in the school hallway with her friends after Mr. Yuzui leaves. Her friends ask if that was the teacher, and Misao confirms he gave her some extra practice materials. Misao is taken aback when her friends suddenly ask if she finally has a boyfriend. The friends point out the look on Misao's face and ask if she was just thinking about someone. They note that Christmas is approaching and she hasn't mentioned wanting a boyfriend lately. Misao blushes furiously, making it obvious to her friends that there is someone special. They eagerly press her for details about who he is and what he is like. Misao realizes she cannot reveal her relationship with Mr. Yuzui. She tells them he is just a childhood friend from her old neighborhood, but her friends demand to see a photo of him soon. Walking alone through the city, Misao feels conflicted and wonders how she is going to handle her friend's request for a picture. Misao accidentally bumps into a man on the street, but it turns out to be Buzan and Zenki in disguises. They apologize for the collision while she recognizes them. The retainers ask Misao why she was walking so distractedly and warn her that malicious spirits are still targeting her. Misao tells them they can stop guarding her for now and asks if she can visit the mansion later. Misao arrives at the mansion and is greeted with an incredibly enthusiastic welcome from all the retainers. Feeling overwhelmed by their intense energy, Misao thinks about how bright they are. She looks at her phone, preparing to ask them for a favor. Misao asks the retainers if one of them would be willing to stand in for Kaio and take a photo with her to show her friends. Zenki, who is 20, claims he is the perfect age for the photo. Misao thinks the retainers are a perfectly matched group, despite how scary Zenki looks at first. Buzan is described as 26 and appears to be a mature playboy with blue eyes. Sagami is 24 and known as a cool beauty, while Hoki is only 15 and described as a pretty boy. Misao thinks Hoki might be a good choice for the photo. Zenki tells Misao to lend him her phone so he can take the picture. Misao thanks him and tells the group to line up. Zenki takes a photo of Sagami and Misao together. A retainer remarks that they look like a real couple, which flusters Misao. Kaio unexpectedly arrives home early and overhears that Misao wants a picture of her boyfriend. He smiles and holds out his hand, asking to see the photo. Kaio's expression darkens as he sees the picture and immediately deletes it. Misao yells at him for being so petty, but Kaio tells her to shut up and offers to take a much more intimate photo himself. Kaio leans in and whispers scandalous rumors about the retainers to Misao, claiming Sagami and Hoki are a couple. Misao is horrified by the accusations and tries to explain she was not being unfaithful. Kaio continues his smear campaign, claiming Zenki is in love with his sister and Buzan has an illness. He tells Misao to listen carefully because he is the only one for her, before collapsing from sheer exhaustion. Misao looks down at Kaio's collapsed body, wondering if he is simply a controlling, overly jealous boyfriend. She nervously nudges him to see if he is all right, wondering aloud what the illness he mentioned actually is. The retainers gather around and calmly observe the scene, with Sagami joking that Kaio is dead and directing the others to carry him away, while Misao reacts with shock. As Misao prepares to leave, Sagami stops her and asks if she wants to have some persimmons instead of heading home right away. Misao is surprised by the offer, and the retainers point out the persimmon tree in the garden, explaining that the fruit is perfectly ripe and ready for eating. The retainers bring out a ladder and prepare to gather the fruit, though they have to stop one of their own from using supernatural strength or magic to shake the tree and knock it down. Sagami offers to hold the ladder steady, while Misao climbs up to pick the fruit, which makes Hoki blush as he watches the two of them interact. Sagami leads Misao deeper into the garden, explaining that they have already picked and eaten most of the other trees clean, but saved one special tree just for her, handing her a soft, ripe persimmon to eat. Sagami tells Misao not to worry too much about Kaio because he is just sulking, adding that they raised him poorly, and his dramatic behavior has not changed since they were children. Saburo joins them and laughs, teasing that Sagami was essentially Kaio's male governess and trained him like a prince for 10 years, making Misao curious about Kaio's childhood. Misao looks at the group of warm, smiling retainers, feeling deeply grateful that they have completely accepted her into their lives without any hesitation since the very first day they met. Misao smiles brightly, thinking that being around the retainers feels so natural that it is as if they have all been close friends forever. Misao notices that young Taro has finally started to smile again, as he eagerly carries a large plate of persimmons, offering to make a delicious treat out of them. Sagami explains to Misao that Taro was deeply traumatized by what Shu did to him, and even after his physical wounds healed, his heart remained closed until Kaio patiently kept the boy by his side to help him recover. Sagami adds that, while Kaio has always had a nurturing side, he is particularly gentle with young children, because Misao was around that same age when Kaio had to leave her behind in the past. In a flashback, Kaio looks on as Sagami reveals that Kaio always kept Taro close, because the young boy constantly reminded him of Misao. Sagami confesses that Kaio spoke about her so often that Sagami felt as if she were a little sister, before they even met, explaining that they specifically saved the persimmon tree, because Kaio always talked about how they played together picking them as children. Misao gently cradles the persimmon in her hands, as Sagami adds that Kaio's endless stories about her made the entire household eagerly anticipate the day they would finally get to meet her. Misao looks at Jiro, Hoki, and Saburo, suddenly understanding why the retainers have always treated her with such immense warmth and kindness. Misao's eyes widen with soft emotion as she takes in the true depth of Kaio's lasting affection, and how much he deals his love for her with everyone around him. Misao is left in quiet contemplation, gently wondering about the future and the long-held bond they have since childhood. Misao reflects on how Kaio returned for her 10 years later to keep his childhood promise despite her stubborn insistence that she did not care and would never marry him. She wonders how many times she must have hurt him in her ignorance, yet he never stopped protecting her, feeling relieved that their hearts are finally in tune. Misao overhears Hoki referring to Sagami as his brother, and realizes Kaio's scandalous gossip about them was entirely made up, leaving her utterly bewildered by Kaio's lie as Sagami watches her dizzy state. The retainers are annoyed that Misao actually fell for Kaio's ridiculous lies, particularly the absurd claim about sexually transmitted diseases, which leaves Misao blushing in embarrassment at her own gullibility. Sagami remarks that Kaio is simply head over heels for his lady, though Misao quietly feels that doesn't entirely excuse his extreme protectiveness. Misao asks Sagami to tell her even more stories about Kaio, admitting to herself that she is slightly envious of the retainers, because they know a side of Kaio that she has never seen. Sagami happily agrees to her request, looking down at her with a warm and gentle smile. Misao is startled to see a rare smile on Sagami's face, and she quietly hopes that she will slowly be able to bridge the gap of the 10 years they spent apart. Misao reflects on her desire to catch up to Kaio's intense feelings as quickly as possible, dreaming of a day when they can be fully united. Misao sits down with the retainers as they prepare a pot of black tea, offering milk and sugar to anyone who wants to help themselves. Buzin pours some calvados and apple brandy into Misao's tea while she watches curiously, as the conversation reminds her of her childhood memories playing with Kaio. Later, Misao feels incredibly dizzy and disoriented, opening her eyes to find herself lying down close to Kaio. Kaio gazes at her with a calm, silent expression as she struggles to process her surroundings. Kaio firmly pins Misao down on the futon, warning her not to move as she gasps in sudden panic at their intimate position. Misao notices a bandage on her forehead and panics, but Kaio warns her that her head will bleed again if she thrashes, asking if she remembers drinking the brandy in her tea. Kaio explains that she got heavily intoxicated, lost her footing on the porch, and fell headfirst onto the stone garden path, cutting her forehead in the process. Misao is mortified when Kaio reveals that alcohol turns her into a kissing monster, explaining that she even cornered the triplets and gave young Taro a nosebleed by kissing him. When a flustered Misao asks Kaio if he witnessed her drunken antics, and if he is angry, Kaio glares intensely at her and declares that he has been angry from the very start. Kaio pins Misao down and asserts that he needs to heal her cut, but since she deserves a punishment for her behavior, he intends to make the healing process highly painful. Kaio roughly licks and kisses her forehead to heal the injury, ignoring her tearful protests that it hurts, while Misao quietly laments that he never has any sweet or gentle words for her. Kaio pulls Misao into his lap and asks if she has learned her lesson. Misao reflects that Kaio often uses physical force to make her understand what he is thinking, which is why it feels so unfair when he hugs her gently instead, as she can feel his genuine emotions. Kaio notices her funny expression and asks what is wrong. Misao continues to make a funny pout, drawing a comment from Kaio. Misao looks at Kaio and tearfully thanks him for never giving up on her. She explains that because of him, she survived without a scratch and is now able to be with the one she truly loves. Kaio looks back at her with a gentle, soft smile. Kaio gently cups Misao's cheek and leans in close to her face. Misao slowly closes her eyes as Kaio tenderly tilts her face up. Kaio presses his lips to hers in a soft, loving kiss, conveying his message of love directly to her heart. They continue to embrace and kiss deeply, while Kaio remains entirely focused on holding her close. Misao is left breathless and blushing deeply after the kiss, struggling to find her words. Kaio wraps his arms around Misao from behind and rests against her, as she happily thinks about how she will one day become his bride, whispering for him to do it again. As they walk home together at night, Misao asks Kaio to stop smirking, but he teases her about her drunken request for another kiss and her flushed expression. Misao quickly denies it, explaining that her father, a college professor, is currently away on a fact-finding trip. Kaio is surprised to learn that Misao is the daughter of a scholar and asks her to stay a little longer, but she explains she must go home early because her father specializes in humanities and is returning home today. Misao bids Kaio goodbye and turns to walk toward her house, but Kaio calls out to tell her that she forgot something. Misao realizes she left her phone behind, but as she turns back, Kaio tenderly cradles her face and begs her to take a photo with him, promising to wear a disguise or anything she wants. Misao apologizes for not talking things over with him, and Kaio agrees as long as she understands. Walking away, Misao reflects on how long she has waited for Kaio's warm hand, looking forward to the day she will be permanently wrapped in his arms as she approaches her house. As soon as Misao enters her house and announces her return, her father, wearing a loud leopard print shirt and glasses, leaps forward to smother her in a dramatic hug, scolding her for being late before demanding to get a good look at his pretty daughter. Her father holds her face tightly, apologizing dramatically for missing her birthday as Misao gasps and welcomes him home. Her father happily announces his return, but suddenly stops to examine her, noting that she has become more feminine and demanding to know if she has found a boyfriend, loudly declaring that he will never allow it. Misao quietly apologizes to her father, thinking to herself that she already has someone she wants to marry. As she walks down the hallway, she suddenly trips over a massive stack of books piled on the floor and crashes down with a loud thud. Rubbing her sore head, Misao looks at the books she tripped over and discovers they are academic texts on ethnology and Japanese folklore, prompting her father to run over and apologize for letting his extra research books spill out into the hallway. Misao looks down at the open page of her father's book, which is titled The Tengus Bride Taking. Misao reads further, stunned to find that the legends describe her exact situation perfectly. Her father notices her shock and explains that the story is a piece of folklore from all over about people being spirited away. Misao is left completely frozen in deep shock as her father casually warns her to be careful too. As her father explains that people in the olden days believed missing young women had been taken by a tengu, as a bride, Misao silently questions why she never put these facts together before. Misao is filled with dread as she contemplates what will truly happen to her if she marries Kaio and is taken away into his world. Misao continues to wonder what her life will look like once she officially becomes Kaio's tengu bride. The next morning at school, Misao's friends greet her and excitedly ask if she heard about a heroic guy who just performed a brave rescue. Her friends explain that due to yesterday's heavy rain, the river rose and nearly swept a child away, but Mr. Yuzui bravely jumped in to save him. Misao and the rest of the class gasp in shock as a thoroughly drenched Mr. Yuzui suddenly walks past them. The female students swoon over Mr. Yuzui's wet-toned physique as he dries off, while Misao watches with annoyance, thinking she absolutely does not want any other girls looking at him like that. As her classmates head off to their lesson, Misao pouts and mutters that if she were the one walking around half-naked, Kaio would be furious. Kaio looks over and silently signals for her to follow him. Misao follows him into a storage room, but as soon as she steps inside, Kaio suddenly grabs her and shuts the door behind them, catching her completely off guard. Misao shivers from the cold as wet Kaio embraces her, and she frantically complains that he is getting her wet and practically drowning her, prompting Kaio to quickly apologize. Kaio tells her he did it because she was looking at him as if she wanted him all to herself, refusing to let her go until he is finished. Misao silently closes her eyes as Kaio holds her tightly in his arms. Misao is amazed to find that she is suddenly completely dry, and Kaio explains that for a monster, bouncing the water off of her takes almost no effort at all. Wrapping her in his warmth, she silently wonders if being spirited away as a tengu bride is really her ultimate destiny. Misao leans in to kiss Kaio, privately reflecting that the secrets she does not know about his world make her feel deeply insecure, worrying that learning the truth might end up hurting him again. Kaio stops kissing and looks at her with a serious expression, quietly calling out her name when he senses her sudden withdrawal. Misao panics when she hears the school bell ringing, realizing they have been found out, and flusteredly tells him she should go to class, though Kaio tells her to wait. Kaio presents Misao with a feather pendant and tells her she must wear it at all times to keep other monsters away, clarifying that it serves as a clear mark of his ownership. Kaio looks at her with intense eyes and firmly repeats that the pendant shows everyone she belongs to him. Misao blushes furiously as she clutches the pendant close to her chest. Misao softly admits to herself that she truly likes Kaio and wants to be close to him. Misao's deep reflection is suddenly cut short as a loud, unexpected voice echoes down the school hallway. Shuhei bursts into the area, shouting that he was always entirely serious, catching both of them off guard, while Misao privately thinks that her growing affection for Kaio only makes her feel more afraid. Shuhei walks right up to them with a cheerful smile and points out how incredibly close they are, startling both Kaio and Misao. Misao has no idea who the stranger is, but Kaio introduces him as Shuhei Kuzunoha, the heir of the Yauko Fox Demon clan who previously fought Kaio and lost. Shuhei quickly waves his hands and reassures them that he did not come for revenge and has completely surrendered his claim on Misao. Shuhei admits he has no choice but to give up because Kaio is vastly stronger than him, teasingly pointing out that they are already being physically intimate in school storage rooms. Kaio remains entirely skeptical and asks Shuhei how he could possibly prove his sincerity. Kaio looks at Shuhei with a grim expression and commands him to hand over the Yauko clan's version of the immortal fruit record if he truly wants to prove his sincerity. Shuhei falls silent and closes his eyes, his cheerful expression vanishing as he considers the gravity of Kaio's demand. Shuhei nervously protests that even though he is the heir, he is not the master of his clan, yet meaning there are secret records he still does not have access to. Kaio threatens to finish him off on the spot, while a completely bewildered Misao asks what the immortal fruit record actually is. Shuhei quickly panics and promises to head home and ask his clan elders about the record, begging Kaio to stop looking so murderous before sprinting away, leaving Misao to stare up at a deeply serious Kaio. Kaio walks away down the hallway as the class bell rings, gently tapping Misao on her head and ordering her not to take off the pendant under any circumstances, while Misao watches him go, her heart filled with fear. After school, Misao happily hangs out with her friends, planning to watch a movie together. Her friends note how extraordinarily happy she looks, and she explains it is because this is their first time going out together after school. Misao glances down at her pendant, thinking about how incredibly useful it is. Misao reflects on how she can finally live a normal teenage life without constantly being targeted by monsters who usually attack her so heavily in public spaces that she can barely walk. Her relief is cut short at a cafe when her friend suddenly asks if she has a photo of her boyfriend, causing Misao to spit out her drink in shock. Misao reluctantly shows her friends a terrifying photo of Kaio looking like a violent monster, making them shout in shock. Her friends look at the frightening picture in complete silence, assuming that Misao must be going through a very difficult and troubled relationship. They gently ask if she has something on her mind, pointing out that she has looked deeply unhappy since her birthday and reassuring her that they will not press for answers if she is uncomfortable sharing. Her friends encourage her not to struggle on her own and to confide in them, while Misao silently holds her coffee cup, wishing she could tell them that she is actually being hunted by demons. Misao beams with a bright smile, thanking them sincerely and telling them that just knowing they care about her makes her incredibly happy. Misao arrives home in the evening, wondering why the house is so quiet, only for her frantic father to open the door and shout about how late she is, loudly questioning if she always comes home at this hour. In the kitchen, Yoko reassures her husband that 6 in the evening is not late at all, but Yashio remains deeply anxious, pointing out that this dusk hour is known as the hour of monsters, and worrying that even if Kaio is with her, they still cannot predict what danger a human might face when paired with a non-human. Yashio slumps over in worry, explaining that ever since Misao was a little girl, she has seen things that others could not, which is why he has never stopped worrying about her safety. Misao stands quietly by the door, overhearing her father admit his fear of her getting into an accident, and confessing that if she finds a partner who can ease his worries, he will gladly entrust her care to him. Yoko chides her weeping husband to stop crying and help her in the kitchen, noting that he went completely overboard, preparing a massive feast of Misao's childhood favorites to properly celebrate her birthday. Misao covers her face and weeps silently in the hallway, overwhelmed by her parents' profound love, as she thinks about what it will truly mean to leave them behind after she becomes Kaio's bride. Misao realizes with painful clarity that entering Kaio's world means she could eventually lose her family and friends, the very people who love and care about her the most. Looking at her home under the night sky, Misao acknowledges that she is simply not prepared to say goodbye to her normal life just yet. Misao is pulled from her thoughts as a voice suddenly calls out to her, welcoming her to the temple. Misao visits the temple in her winter coat, wearing Kaio's feather pendant. Young Taro happily welcomes her and offers to show her where Kaio is, while Misao apologizes for dropping by so late. Taro notices her pendant and excitedly asks if the feather belongs to Kaio. When Misao confirms Kaio gave it to her, Taro beams with envy, while Misao quietly holds the pendant with a sad, conflicted expression. Misao gazes down at the feather resting in her palm, desperately wondering how she can possibly find the words to explain her doubts and fears to Kaio. Misao wonders how she should broach the subject as she spots Kaio sitting on the porch under the night sky. When she approaches, Kaio senses her presence and calls out her name. Kaio looks down at Misao with a gentle smile and asks what is wrong when he notices her blushing and acting hesitant. Misao awkwardly sits next to Kaio and tries to make small talk by commenting on how beautiful the moon is tonight. When Kaio asks her if the feather pendant worked well, she happily tells him that it has been great. Misao eagerly explains that monsters no longer come near her, allowing her to hang out with her friends after school for the first time. She happily mentions that her friends even teased her for looking so joyful, while Kaio listens to her story with a soft smile. As Kaio quietly takes a sip of his drink, Misao stares at him, her happy expression fading as her underlying doubts and worries quickly return. Taro is highly envious when he recognizes the feather on the pendant as Kaio's. Misao quietly realizes that Kaio gave her the charm because he truly understood her underlying worries. Taro explains that a tengu makes such a charm out of his longest feather, which means he can no longer fly once he pulls it out. He notes that it serves as a lucky amulet given only to someone of immense significance, prompting Misao to ask if Taro does not have one because he is already strong. Misao realizes how much effort Kaio puts into making her feel cherished and important. Her thoughts are interrupted when Kaio unexpectedly holds out a small cup and offers her a drink. Misao objects that she is not of age yet and cannot drink, terrified that even a little alcohol will turn her back into a kissing monster. Kaio dismisses her worries and coaxes her to take at least a single sip of the premium sake, assuring her that it is easy to drink. Misao leans in and asks a tender, quiet kiss with Kaio on the porch under the night sky. Misao gazes deeply at Kaio and confesses that even without the influence of the sake, she would still choose to kiss him. Misao admits she cannot bring herself to say the words she is thinking as she has an intimate moment with Kaio. Misao feels torn by indecision, wondering if Kaio will be disappointed in her inability to choose between the two paths in front of her. Kaio confronts Misao about her behavior while she breathlessly begs him to help her break the curse affecting her. Misao realizes her impulsive actions were likely a subconscious attempt to provoke Kaio into striking her, leaving her feeling frustrated as she watches him. Misao stands in the garden, resolved that she cannot simply abandon her questions about her future as Kaio's bride. Sagami observes that the princess has left and questions why Kaio allowed her to go, while Misao watches them from a distance, deciding she cannot approach them right now. Sagami warns Kaio that merely planning a wedding is not enough, stressing that he must physically consummate the relationship with her. Sagami jokingly offers to prepare sleeping pills, teasing Kaio about his serious demeanor, while Misao worries that Kaio and the others have no idea what she is going through. Kaio admits that he truly wants to embrace Misao at this very moment. Kaio remarks that it is a wild dream to expect her to leave everything behind just to satisfy him. Sagami reminds Kaio not to let the princess know too much, and tells him to try harder while Kaio reflects on his past self before he met Misao. Kaio acknowledges that without the young Misao, he would still be struggling with his resentment toward his brother's birthright. Misao realizes that it was her presence that allowed Kaio to become the master and eventually hold the things he treasures today. Kaio states firmly that he cannot bring himself to take away the things that Misao loves most. Misao weeps as Kaio explains that the Kuzunoha clan welcomed their bride 300 years ago, and they must now attempt to recover the immortal fruit record. Misao and Kaio consider that the immortal fruit record might contain information about future couples, leading Misao to hope she could discover the truth. Misao feels uneasy as she is approached by Shuhei at school. Shuhei explains that he has inquired about the immortal fruit record within his clan. Shuhei notes that the master of his house is angry because he found out about the conflict over the bride, making it impossible to take the record outside the house. Shuhei asks if Misao wants to see the book for herself, noting that it would be a shame if she could not read what is written about her. Shuhei tells Misao that he will allow her to view the immortal fruit record if she visits his house by herself. Misao reflects on the contents of the immortal fruit record, noting that it contains data on each generation of the Kuzunoha clan and information regarding the brides. Shuhei hands Misao a note with his address, reiterating that he will let her look at the record if she comes alone. Misao walks down the street clutching the note, feeling a strong desire to know the truth about her situation. Misao considers her next steps as she thinks about Shuhei. Misao navigates the neighborhood while checking a map to locate the address Shuhei provided. Misao meets a young boy who identifies himself as Kazan, the younger brother of Shuhei, and he gestures for her to follow him. Kazan leads Misao to the entrance of a house where she looks at the structure and realizes where she has arrived. Kazan welcomes Misao inside, and she thanks him, admitting that she definitely would have been lost without his help. A small fox suddenly jumps onto Shuhei's shoulder, and Misao is startled to realize it has shape-shifted, reacting with surprise to the presence of the fox demon. Shuhei notices the feather amulet Kaio gave to Misao and tells her to take it off, explaining that the house is warded, and the object is considered foreign to his clan. Misao hesitates and tells Shuhei that she cannot take the amulet off. Misao explains that she cannot go inside the house while wearing the amulet, even though she still wants to see the immortal fruit record. Kaio suddenly appears and tells Misao that he followed her, urging her to take the opportunity to see the record since Shuhei is allowing it. Kaio reassures Misao that it is all right to remove the feather, telling her that she does not need it as long as she is with him. Kaio removes the feather pendant from Misao's neck and tells her that they should get going. As the necklace drops away, he wraps his arm around her shoulders to lead her forward. Misao feels reassured, telling herself that she is perfectly safe as long as Kaio is by her side, though she ominously reflects that she was wrong to make that assumption. Misao admits to herself that she still felt subconsciously insecure about the situation. Shuhei instructs them not to pry to shut the door, and to take a seat, explaining that the head of the Kuzunoha clan vanished without warning, but is supposedly retrieving the immortal fruit record. Misao begins to feel that something is wrong and realizes her mind is going completely blank. Smoke quietly drifts into the air from a small incense burner nearby. Kaio asks Misao if she knows what the immortal fruit is, and when she says no, he explains that it is a peach. He elaborates that peaches were believed to provide spiritual strength, and that legends claimed eating them granted immortality, which is why monsters refer to her by that title. Kaio leans close to Misao, remarking that truthfully her body smells similar to a peach. Kaio brings Misao's hand near his mouth while she flustredly tells him to wait. Misao asks Kaio what he is doing, and he calmly replies that he thinks he will eat her. Kaio pins Misao to the floor and pulls at her clothes, declaring that she would be very sweet. He states that he has reached his limit and wants to embrace her. Misao looks up in shock and asks why, recalling that Kaio explicitly said he couldn't take away the things she loved most. Seeing the young boy standing nearby, she realizes that the person pinning her down is not Kaio. Misao realizes the man is an imposter as a small fox rests near her neck. Misao realizes the man is a transformed member of the Kuzunoha clan. She screams for him to stop as he grabs her leg, while another voice curses repeatedly from outside. Subordinates rush in to alert their master, and Shuhei warning that intruders with powerful strength have broken through the estate's wards. Shuhei hastily binds Misao with rope, ordering her to stay there and not move. Shuhei smiles mockingly at the bound Misao, warning her not to think that rescuers will magically appear at the most critical moment. Misao sits helplessly bound by the ropes, silently insisting to herself that she doesn't think that at all. A masked figure with large black wings suddenly crashes through the window, sending feathers flying everywhere. Misao stares up in wide-eyed shock at the sudden arrival of the winged intruder. Misao is deeply confused as she wonders which of them is the real Kaio. The masked intruder steps into the room and immediately calls out her name. The masked Kaio approaches and begins loosening her ropes, asking if she is okay and if she recognizes him. Misao recognizes him as the real Kaio after noticing a sharp splinter piercing his hand. Kaio tightly grips the hilt of his sword, causing dark blood to drip heavily from his injured hand onto the floor. Kaio pulls Misao into a protective embrace, angrily asking how many times he has to tell her, until she understands not to hurt herself. Shuhei stares silently as Kaio holds Misao tightly in his arms. More of the Kuzunoha clan's subordinates rush onto the scene, loudly announcing to Shuhei that everyone is there to help. The surrounding members of the Kuzunoha clan realize that even though Kaio is a powerful clan leader, he is currently outnumbered, making this their perfect opportunity to capture Misao. Misao anxiously calls out Kaio's name as he keeps his fierce gaze locked onto the enemies surrounding them. The Tengu clan warriors suddenly appear from the shadows behind the fox demons, readying their weapons, as they declare that this is actually an ideal chance to eliminate their opponents. Shuhei watches in disbelief as a large group of winged Tengu warriors suddenly descend upon the estate, accompanied by a flock of crows. The elite Tengu retainers take their positions with drawn blades, catching the Fox clan entirely by surprise, as they scramble to alert Shuhei to the sudden intrusion. With a massive battle looming between the two rival factions, Shuhei's subordinates beg their leader to give them the command to fight. To the absolute bewilderment of his followers, Shuhei casually waves his hands and tells everyone to call off the battle and stop fighting. Shuhei explains that he has already given up on marrying Misao and only wanted her to see the immortal fruit record, which she came to see of her own free will, before apologizing for overdoing his transformation and offering to let them view the record as a peace offering. While his subordinates hysterically protest his decision to a copied disc of the records, Shuhei warns Kaio that it might actually be better for him if they do not read it. Shuhei smiles, cryptically warning Kaio that once he reads the contents of the record, he will not dare to make Misao his bride. Kaio and Misao stare back in stunned silence at Shuhei's ominous warning. Shuhei's warning about the marriage continues to linger heavily in the air as they prepare to leave. Back outside the temple, Kaio and Misao stand in a heavy contemplative silence as they process the warning about their future. Kaio turns to Misao and points out that this is the very first time he has allowed her to see his true unmasked appearance. Kaio explains that his ominous red eyes and black wings are his natural form, asking Misao if she is afraid of him, only to be taken aback when she begins to cry. Misao tearfully apologizes, explaining that she wanted to see the record because of her worries about their marriage, confessing that she has accepted his constant protection without ever trying to understand his world or offering anything in return. Kaio suddenly pulls Misao close and kisses her on the lips to cut off her tears and apologies. Kaio continues to kiss her deeply, ignoring her soft, muffled complaints that the embrace hurts. Kaio declares that he will accept all of her doubts and insecurities, promising to wait for her as long as it takes, but firmly states that he will never allow her to run away from his side. Kaio looks at Misao with fierce determination, swearing that he will never give up on her for his entire life. Misao is deeply moved to tears by Kaio's intense declaration of love and devotion. Misao embraces Kaio tightly and tearfully tells him that she feels the same way, declaring that she deeply loves him and has never once thought about running away from his side. They hold each other close under the temple roof, resolved to support one another on their unknown path forward, while an observer nearby asks if they successfully took the copied CD-ROM with them. Shuhei holds the copied disc and notes that although he went to great lengths to ensure it is completely unaltered, the final outcome detailed on the record is exceptionally grim. Shuhei explains to his worried followers that he surrendered because he knew he could not win the direct fight, but asserts that he has no intention of attacking Kaio directly next time. A mysterious ally laughs and praises Shuhei for being a cunning fox demon, expressing absolute relief at having joined forces with him. Shirohei agrees with Shuhei and suggests they use their intellect to separate Kaio and Misao instead of relying on brute force, warning him not to make a move without her. Shirohei turns toward the sliding door and invites another clan member named Kensuke to join their conspiracy. The young man is revealed to be Kensuke, the official heir to the Daojiaoji clan. Shirohei smiles alongside her new allies and declares that it is finally time for them to fight back and take their revenge. Misao remains deeply troubled by Shuhei's warnings, feeling as though his ominous words about her future as Kaio's bride are a painful thorn she cannot remove from her heart. Misao watches Kaio read a book with a somber expression, overhearing him mutter a strange phrase about returning the six. Kaio and his retainer discuss the record, and note that one of the halves cannot join if they do not act, soon leaving a hidden Misao deeply confused about what they are referring to. Misao steps forward into the yard and directly asks what the phrase means, causing the retainers to freeze in sudden panic. A shocked retainer desperately warns Misao that she must never repeat those words aloud, frantically demanding to know where she heard them. The retainer nervously explains that the phrase is actually a crude bedroom technique, prompting a flustered Kaio to quickly hide his adult manual, while Misao crouches on the ground in absolute mortification. Kaio casually comments that this is a road they will both be forced to take, eventually leaving Misao to angrily deny ever wanting to do such a thing, while she scolds him for listening to his retainers. Misao looks away silently, her face flushing as she recalls what Kaio said to her in the past. Misao reflects that she does not plan to run away, but worries that if things keep going like this, something major will inevitably happen. Misao notes that they have not spoken about the record since that night, but Kaio suddenly breaks the silence by announcing his plans to have Hoki transfer into her school soon because of a bad feeling. Kaio explains that he senses another demon nearby, and that his ability to protect her as a teacher is limited, prompting Misao to complain that having a retainer transfer in will only attract unwanted attention. Misao silently considers how both Tengu and Fox demons possess a striking, otherworldly beauty, far surpassing that of normal humans. Kaio confidently agrees, saying it is only natural for them to look that way. Kaio asks Misao if she would have chosen a demon if they did not possess such beautiful human forms. Kaio smiles warmly and confesses that he has his attractive features specifically to catch her eye and win her love, asking her not to be annoyed by his appearance. Misao softly denies being annoyed, just as Kaio pulls out a brand new feather pendant, instructing her to never take it off again. Kaio gently places the necklace around her neck, explaining that it took ages to find since it is not something he can easily reproduce. Misao finds absolute bliss and comfort as she is wrapped in Kaio's warm embrace. Holding Kaio tightly, Misao silently questions what she will ultimately have to sacrifice in exchange for the warmth of his embrace. Back at school, students in the hallway eagerly gossip about a sudden rumor regarding a new student in the classroom next to theirs. Misao's friends tell her that a new transfer student has already arrived, prompting Misao to wonder if Hoki has already taken his place at the school. Misao wonders why Hoki would be placed in the adjacent classroom, but her thoughts are cut short when she accidentally bumps directly into a stranger in the hallway. Misao quickly apologizes to the boy, but she is left completely frozen in shock when the stranger calls her by her first name. Misao watches the mysterious boy walk away, realizing he is indeed the new transfer student, but definitely not Hoki, while her classmates murmur about how terrifyingly unapproachable he seems. Watching from a distance, Shirohei scolds Kensuke for needlessly scaring people on his first day, while Shuhei smiles and remarks that keeping their sibling relationship a secret will make their plans much more entertaining. Shuhei notes that even though Shirohei and Kensuke are fraternal twins, they do not look alike at all, prompting a brief banter about their snake demon heritage. While carrying a trash box outside the school, Misao hears a sudden noise from the outdoor incinerator and is shocked to see a dark figure hiding inside. Misao drags Kensuke out of the incinerator and asks why he was in there, to which he replies that he is used to dark places where nobody comes, prompting her to point out that it is an incinerator, before noticing that his head is bleeding. Misao offers Kensuke her handkerchief, but she freezes in shock when he thanks her by name and introduces himself as Daojiaoji Kensuke, the new transfer student. When Misao asks how he already knows her name, Kensuke calmly explains that it is because he is a demon. Misao is startled by his blunt admission, which immediately sends Kensuke into a panic, as he realizes he said too much. Kensuke frantically regrets his slip of the tongue, muttering that his partners wanted him to keep his identity a secret to get close to her, and crying that Kyo will yell at him again, prompting Misao to ask if he is referring to the snake demon Kyo. Misao deduces that Kensuke is a snake demon associated with Kyo, the twin sister, who previously tried to poison her to get to Kyo, while Kensuke despairs over making another mistake. And Misao silently notes how completely different the twins look from each other. A sudden sharp sound cuts through the air as crows scatter from the trees, catching Misao's attention. Kyo suddenly appears on the scene, commenting that many low-level demons have gathered nearby and warning that it is dangerous to leave even a small group of them roaming around. Misao touches her feather pendant and reassures Kyo that she should be perfectly safe as long as she is wearing his protective charm. Kyo flashes a bright, reassuring smile that instantly eases Misao's worries, prompting her to thank him. Kyo's warm expression instantly vanishes as he spots Kensuke standing behind Misao, recognizing him as one of their arrogant enemies. Terrified by the powerful Tengu, Kensuke screams in fright and immediately bolts from the scene. Kensuke frantically apologizes for intruding and bids them goodbye as he sprints away, making sure to carry the rubbish bin with him, and leaving Kyo completely speechless. Kyo is left standing with his arm outstretched in utter bewilderment, but quickly recovers and warns Misao not to lower her guard because she is undoubtedly Kensuke's target. Kyo gently strokes Misao's hair and begs her to stay away from the new transfer student, and she softly promises to do as he asks. Later at school, Misao is talking to her friend when Kensuke suddenly waves at her from the hallway, prompting her to panic and make a hasty excuse about forgetting something so she can run away. Misao sprints toward the restroom to hide, but Kensuke persists in following her down the corridor and peeking in after her. Misao's friends notice Kensuke's gloomy state and urge Misao to go and apologize to him, leaving her struggling to explain that the situation is not what they think. Misao reflects that she does not know how to handle Kensuke since he is completely different from the other demons she has faced, but her thoughts are cut short as Kensuke suddenly trips and falls while running toward her. Kensuke tumbles headfirst down the stairs, leaving Misao's friends to scream in absolute panic while he lies groaning on the floor below. Misao rushes down to check on Kensuke, asking if he is awake as he slowly opens his eyes. Misao tells him he fell down the stairs, but although she wants to leave before Kyo spots them, she realizes she cannot leave him alone in this state, while Kensuke quietly thanks her and thinks to himself that she is exceptionally kind. Kensuke explains that most girls are terrified of his fierce appearance and would never care if he got hurt, adding that even his twin sister, Kyo, is far scarier than he is. Kensuke softly confesses that this is the very first time in his life he has ever been treated with genuine care. Kensuke apologizes for constantly chasing after her, while a flustered Misao insists that lending him a handkerchief was really not a big deal. Kensuke hands back her washed handkerchief, but notes that he has already borrowed another one, before quietly adding that he is well aware of her feelings for the Tengu leader. Kensuke smiles gently and reassures Misao that even though his twin sister forced him to come to the school, he has no intention of harming her, sadly admitting that he does not believe he is qualified to be his clan's heir. Misao silently recalls Kyo's question about whether she would still have chosen a demon if they were not beautiful as humans. Misao reflects that she loves Kyo for who he is rather than his looks, noting that many of the beautiful and friendly-looking demons she has encountered in the past were far from pleasant beneath their attractive smiles. She remembers how some of those attractive demons had smiled while actively trying to kill or violate her, proving that appearance means nothing. Misao tells Kensuke that she would never judge or choose to be with someone simply based on their physical appearance. Kensuke flinches in sudden terror as he notices Kyo standing nearby in his suit, glaring down at him with an icy expression. Misao immediately runs over to Kyo's side while Kensuke quietly watches her go. Misao frantically explains that Kensuke only fell down the stairs while trying to help her, pleading that nothing bad happened and she simply could not leave him injured. Kyo remains entirely silent, crossing his arms and fixing Misao with a cold, displeased glare. Kyo reminds Misao that he had explicitly begged her to stay away from Kensuke, explaining that the mere thought of something happening to her drives him completely crazy. Kyo grips Misao tightly and tells her that his worry must not be painful enough for her to understand, leaving her to tremble in the heavy silence, as she realizes this quiet, controlled anger is actually his most terrifying state. Kyo looks deeply into her eyes and demands to know if he has no right to be angry, especially as the one who will embrace her and change her body in the future. Kaio looks away in frustration, noting the irony that, although he is supposed to protect Misao from harm, he is the one who causes her the most pain. Misao looks up at him with a startled expression as he confesses his internal struggle. Kaio looks down with a pained expression, asking Misao if she has been blaming herself for their difficult circumstances this entire time. Kaio asks Misao if she ever considered giving up on him despite the silence and pain between them. Misao reflects on her willingness to endure anything for Kaio's sake, and they an intimate kiss. Misao leans against Kaio and admits that it is because of her unwavering resolve to be with him that she is still standing by his side now. Misao gazes forward with a focused look in her eyes as she processes the depth of her decision to remain with Kaio. Kaio gently holds Misao's face in his hands and leans in close as she blushes and looks up at him. The two a gentle kiss, while Misao reflects that wanting to be with the person you like is a natural feeling. Shirohebei eats a snack and muses that it is rare to find someone you like so much that you would be willing to snatch them away from anyone else. Shirohebei tells Kensuke not to be so polite while he continues to hold onto Misao's handkerchief. Kaio waits outside his estate as Misao arrives, but Kensuke suddenly appears and grabs Misao by the arm before Kaio can react. Kensuke suddenly loses control and bites Misao on the shoulder, causing blood to splatter as Kaio watches in absolute shock. Kaio screams out Misao's name as Kensuke flees the scene with her immediately after the attack. Kaio is left alone outside the estate, looking around frantically for any sign of Misao. Shirohebei appears and explains to a shocked Kaio that Kensuke has completely lost control of himself. Shirohebei confirms that Kensuke took Misao away after biting her and asks Kaio if he has seen them at the estate yet. Shirohebei tearfully blames herself for provoking Kensuke and suggests they find them at her home, mentioning a way to save Misao from the poison. Shirohebei explains that while their snake poison is powerful, demons can develop antibodies in their blood that act as an antidote. Shirohebei asks Kaio if he is willing to accept her poison to save Misao, and he agrees. Meanwhile, Misao tells Kensuke that his bite was painful and uncomfortable. Kensuke looks down at the handkerchief while Misao begs him not to speak about the Kuzunoha clan in such a way. Misao looks on with a worried expression as the plan to trick Kaio and hunt him down is discussed. Misao walks down the street after school wondering why Kaio wanted her to come to his house and reaffirming her willingness to do anything for him. Misao arrives at the gate and is confused to see Kaio and Kyo together, noticing Kaio's open collar as they stand in the garden. Misao is horrified as she watches Kyo embrace Kaio and bite into his neck to deliver the poison as they planned. Misao is tied to the Tree of Destiny while Shuhei and another demon stand beside her. She wonders if she will eventually be picked by someone as she remains trapped. Kaio and his group of warriors stand together among red flowers preparing for the upcoming conflict. The Tengu retainers gather together in human formal wear, with some helping each other get ready while another watches on with a smile. Misao stands by the gate and watches in confusion as Kyo embraces Kaio, wondering what they are doing together. Misao watches with wide eyes as Kyo bites Kaio's neck. Kyo smiles triumphantly while holding on to him. Misao is frozen in shock as Kyo licks the blood from her lips with a predatory smirk. Misao realizes that Kaio allowed himself to be bitten deliberately. Kyo mockingly tells Kaio that he never changes as the poison begins to take effect. Shuhei holds the real Misao hostage from behind while Kensuke stands nearby. Shuhei smiles and remarks that the outcome here is as if nothing is happening at all. Shirohebei comments that they are now able to see the full extent of the master's strength. Shirohebei touches her face with a satisfied grin while Shuhei stands with blood on his shoulder, his plan finally coming together. Kaio realizes he was tricked by a demon transformed into Misao. Shirohebei reveals that the supposed antidote was actually a trap meant to weaken him. Shirohebei explains that she planned to inject a poison that would numb Kaio's entire body. Shuhei mocks the situation while Kyo thanks him for the help. Misao is devastated to learn that Kensuke was working with Shuhei the entire time, feeling betrayed by his deception. Shuhei laughs and tells Misao that Kensuke was lying to her from the start. He reveals that they coordinated the hunt together and that she was always the intended target. Kyo tells Kensuke to take Misao away, but Kensuke admits he does not want to watch the girl be hunted in front of Kyo. Shuhei tells him not to rush, noting that today is the perfect day for their mission. Shuhei reaches his hand out toward Kyo, declaring his intention to finally get rid of the Tengu leader. Kyo shouts at Shuhei to wait, protesting that this is not what they agreed upon, while Misao screams out in denial. Kyo reminds Shuhei that their agreement was to wait until Kyo was completely immobilized so she could take him for herself. She angrily asks if a dead body is not good enough for him. Shuhei tells Kyo to stop yapping and leave, ignoring her complaints as she walks away. Shuhei remarks that Tengu are not the type to fight in a straightforward manner, yet still defeat their opponents. Suddenly, Kyo's screams of shock ring out. Shuhei smiles and mentions that he almost died during their last encounter and that they were both gambling with their lives. Misao breaks away and runs toward Kyo, screaming his name as Kensuke and Shuhei look on. Shuhei declares that one should strike an opponent whenever possible, lunging forward with his hand outstretched. Misao looks on in wide-eyed horror as a massive spray of blood erupts across the scene. Kyo and Kensuke are frozen in shock at the sudden violent turn of events. Misao lies on the ground as blood splatters around her, while Kyo screams her name and curses Shuhei. Shuhei tells Kyo not to be so angry and heartlessly suggests that as long as Misao can breathe, she can still give birth. Kyo glares back with intense fury. Shuhei suddenly stops and wonders why he feels so strange, realizing he cannot exert much power. Kensuke lunges at Shuhei and bites him hard on the shoulder, causing blood to splatter. Shuhei is shocked that his poison had no effect since he used a lethal dose. Kyo laughs and calls him powerless for only looking dangerous, while Shuhei decides he must finish the task alone. Shuhei shouts about victory as more blood splatters through the air, while Misao watches from the ground. Kyo stands in a hail of blood splatters, his hand reaching out as the chaos unfolds around him. Misao is overcome with tears as she watches the violence, while Kensuke and Kyo look on with shock and pain. Kyo fixes an icy, murderous gaze on his enemies as Misao calls out his name. Kyo calmly explains that poison does not affect him, noting that Shuhei looks completely baffled as to why he is still able to move. Shuhei can only sputter in disbelief. Shuhei wonders if this is the power of the master and why such a barrier exists. Kyo points out that the outcome is different from what Shuhei predicted. He explains that because this space cannot completely block foreign entities, anyone can still interfere, but Shuhei cannot use his full power. Kyo adds that he created this tiny space to train Taro, meaning that even a child could easily defeat Shuhei now. One of the retainers steps forward and hands a katana to Kyo, who prepares to draw the weapon. Seeing the drawn blade, a panicked Shuhei desperately offers to hand over the immortal fruit record in exchange for his life. Kyo ignores the plea and advances. Misao cries out Kyo's name in terror as Shuhei laughs, trying to make a final move at close range to save himself. Kyo remains completely unfazed, keeping his eyes locked on his opponent as Misao watches in anxious suspense. Kyo drives his blade directly through Shuhei's chest, causing a massive spray of blood. As Shuhei gasps in shock, Kyo calls out Misao's name while she tearfully looks on. Kyo commands Misao not to close her eyes, telling her to watch exactly what he is about to do. The surrounding retainers watch the scene in tense silence. Kensuke quickly covers Misao's eyes and tells her not to look while Shuhei struggles to understand what Kyo is saying. Misao insists that she must watch because Kyo is doing this for her sake. Meanwhile, Shuhei curses in frustration as Kyo prepares to deliver the final blow. With a single powerful sweep of his sword, Kyo strikes Shuhei down, sending a massive wave of blood into the air. Misao is left sitting on the ground, completely stunned and spattered with blood as the violent clash concludes. Misao stares forward in wide-eyed shock, her face stained with blood, while Kyo looks back at her with a quiet expression. One of the retainers compliments Kyo's swift and clean strike as Kyo sheathes his bloody sword. A retainer remarks that the princess took the gruesome sight well. Kyo walks over to Misao and gently extends his hand to her. Kaio pulls Misao into his arms and tenderly kisses her forehead, comforting her as she weeps from the intense ordeal. Kensuke watches the two of them embrace, looking downcast and guilt-ridden about his involvement in the trap. One of Kaio's retainers addresses Kensuke by his family name, prompting him to close his eyes in resignation. The retainer tells Kensuke that he must stay with them either as a guest or as a hostage, leaving Kensuke with no choice but to comply. Kensuke anxiously asks where his sister Kyo is, and the retainers inform him that they let her escape. When Kensuke points out that Kyo clearly bit Kaio with poison, the retainers reassure him that as long as the princess is unharmed, nothing else matters to their master. Misao is given an oversized robe to wear after her bath. A retainer apologetically promises to find her some better-fitting clothes from others later, while Misao thanks them. She reflects that she is lucky the bathwater is already heated, and notes that someone offered her their own clothes to wear in the meantime. Misao prepares to wash herself, but she is still visibly shaken by the violent events that just took place. Misao trembles and weeps in the bath, overwhelmed by how terrifying the entire experience was. Misao realizes that in the future Kaio will continue to dirty his hands for her sake. She reflects that even though killing and being killed are normal in his world, she finally understands how frightening it truly is, wondering what will become of Kaio's hands one day. Misao looks at her painful shoulder wound, realizing she cannot shower normally because of it. Hearing the door slide open, she assumes it is Taro bringing her dry clothes, but she is startled to find Kaio standing in the doorway instead. Kaio explains that getting water on her wound would be extremely painful, so he wants to take a look at it himself. A highly flustered Misao begs him to wait, asking if he is joking, but Kaio calmly hands her a cloth to cover herself if she feels uncomfortable. Kaio sits behind Misao and observes that the wound is somewhat deep, telling her to endure the treatment for a moment. Misao quietly notes that the wound does not actually hurt that much. Telling Misao not to be so tough, Kaio suddenly leans in and licks the wound on her shoulder. Misao cries out in sudden shock and embarrassment at his touch. Kaio tells Misao that the treatment is done and instructs her to have a warm bath before announcing that he is leaving. As he walks away, Misao reflects that compared to her fear of losing him, this level of intimacy is nothing, and she desperately calls out to him, asking to kiss him. Kaio turns back in surprise as Misao asks if Kyo's poison has started to affect him yet. When he says it definitely has not, Misao reminds him that he previously fell ill from poison, but Kaio insists that he has already developed antibodies, and there is no need for her to kiss him. Misao tearfully demands to know why he will not let her help him. Misao begs him to let her cure him, but Kaio stops her, noting that in a situation like this, they cannot simply proceed. Kaio looks deeply into her eyes, asking her why she is so determined. Kaio pulls Misao close and kisses her passionately, the two a deep, intimate embrace as Kaio holds her tightly. Misao completely surrenders herself to Kaio's embrace, and the two consummate their relationship on the wooden floor of the bathhouse. Outside, the retainers prepare to leave and offer to help if anything is needed. Meanwhile, Kensuke is told he can use the room, and he quietly mentions that he previously looked at the immortal fruit record at the Kuzunoha estate, but only saw the first half. Kaio's retainer repeats the phrase in confusion, wondering what the first half refers to. Kensuke explains that the first half of the record details the couple's initial intimacy before their actual official wedding ceremony. Kensuke adds that although it cannot be called atonement, he is willing to what the record says about the urgent and important destiny that awaits them. Kaio looks forward silently, deep in thought. Kaio's retainers gather together as they prepare to carry out an urgent and important mission. Kaio clarifies with a cartoon mascot that his urgent and important mission is to buy a specific Bibo steamed bun, to which the mascot firmly agrees. Kaio explains that the police department used their full strength to produce these limited edition steamed buns shaped like the Bibo charm, making them high quality, but extremely hard to find since they are only sold at local police stations. He adds that sales are kept quiet to prevent public protests from disrupting the workplace, but admits he wants to try them too if they are really that delicious. Hoki reminds the group that Kaio's main priority is for Misao to be able to taste the steamed bun, while Sagami enthusiastically declares that they must succeed in buying it as their master's command, or they will not return. The retainers realize there are about 1,100 local police stations, making it incredibly exhausting to call each one to ask about the buns. Meanwhile, nearby cafe patrons are startled by the group's sudden appearance. Entering a cafe in their modern human clothes, the retainers politely ask for some coffee, flashing gentle smiles that leave the waitresses completely flustered. While holding a coffee cup, the retainers discuss how confusing their master can be, wondering if Kaio set them on this mission, because Misao is coming to the estate later. Hoki realizes that Kaio sent them away on this wild errand simply because he was too embarrassed to openly tell them that he wanted to be alone with Misao. Deciding to make the most of their sudden free time, one of the retainers suggests finding a place to pass the time, while another decides to head home, and another happily mentions visiting one of his girlfriends. Misao wonders where Taro and the others are, only to be suddenly approached by the 3 crying young Tengu children holding lists. They tearfully explain that they cannot find the police station selling the Bibo steamed buns, but note that Kaio insisted he wanted to try them no matter what. When the young Tengu explain that Kaio actually wanted to buy the steamed bun so Misao could taste it, she is deeply touched by his thoughtfulness. She immediately offers to help them search, pointing out that they will find the station much faster if they all work together. Meanwhile, Kaio stands alone in the quiet estate, entirely unaware that Misao and the children have teamed up to search the police list for him. Kaio lets out a sudden cough and quietly laments that he is completely alone in the house, wondering why nobody is there to keep him company. Kaio watches the empty courtyard and wonders why Misao has not arrived yet. Meanwhile, outside, Misao and the crying children continue their frantic search, completely unable to locate the correct police station. Misao reflects on her stay at the Kuzunoha household, noting that while it was a difficult experience, the little fox named Kajin-chan was actually very cute. When Misao asks if there are any familiars at their own place, Kaio points out that they already have one right there. The familiar is revealed to be a cute round bird like Tengu holding a fan, which suddenly causes a startled Misao to trip and fall. Misao lands on the floor after tripping, while Kaio stands nearby staring down at her with a completely blank expression. Kaio and Misao lie close together on the floor of the bathhouse, breathing heavily as they rest after their intimate encounter. Kaio continues to hold Misao, gently leaning in to press his lips against her cheek. Misao catches her breath while wrapped in her towel, telling herself that she absolutely must not allow this kind of situation to happen again if they are to maintain control. Kaio shifts closer and presses his lips against Misao's collarbone, prompting her to let out a soft gasp as his gaze remains intensely focused. Misao arches her back and sighs softly as Kaio holds her tightly against him on the floor. Misao trembles and cries out Kaio's name as she runs her fingers through his hair, entirely overwhelmed by the depth of his touch. The two lie face to face, catching their breath in the quiet silence as they look deeply into each other's eyes. Kaio watches Misao silently as a nearby wooden bucket rolls and clatters softly against the floor. Feeling suddenly self-conscious, a blushing Misao quickly pulls away and covers her chest, frantically apologizing to Kaio. Kaio looks at her gently and tells her not to react this way. Kaio asks Misao if she finds his touch loathsome and asks if she is truly willing to accept his embrace. Misao blushes and quietly nods to confirm her feelings. Seeing her response, Kaio reaches out and pulls her back toward him. Kaio pulls Misao into a warm, protective embrace, settling her gently onto his lap. Kaio tells Misao that she must not apologize to him, confessing that he also feels exactly the same way about her. Misao admits to herself that she felt afraid. Misao rests her head against Kaio's chest as they hear frantic knocking and footsteps outside. A voice calls out for Kaio, explaining that Daojiaoji wants to discuss the celestial fruit record with him. Taro notices Misao wearing an oversized yukata and asks if it belongs to Kaio. Kaio crossly replies that he could never let her wear another man's clothes. Kaio, Misao, and Kensuke sit around a table with the retainers to hold their meeting. Kaio asks Kensuke if he has seen the celestial fruit record before, and Kensuke confirms that he has, though he only saw the first half. Kensuke explains that the record is preserved on film rolls rather than being physically divided. He notes that the first half covers about 5 years of married life, while any information concerning the pregnancy of the celestial fruit is likely recorded in the later half. Kaio demands that Kensuke recite whatever he memorized, but another retainer argues that it is impossible for Kensuke to remember everything. Kensuke's sweat drops, while Misao hopes he will not say anything embarrassing. The retainers jokingly offer to recite the details slowly later as a topic for the evening to Kaio and Misao's embarrassment. Kensuke explains that 300 years ago the head of the Kuzunoha clan protected the celestial fruit, who was a craftsman's daughter, and they began an intimate relationship when she turned 16. Kensuke notes that the union granted the clan head immense power, making him unmatched at the time. However, the celestial fruit herself did not experience any physical changes. Misao and Kaio listen intently as Kensuke remarks that the situation made it feel as if they were concealing a deity. Kensuke explains that throughout their married life, there was no sign of a thread connecting to the celestial fruit's life span either. Misao turns to Kaio and asks if all of these worries are just groundless fears, hoping that nothing bad will happen to her lifespan, even if she becomes his bride. A retainer points out that the unrevealed second half of the record likely contains the dark truth behind Shuhei's warning about not marrying her. While that remains unclear, they note that they have at least understood one key thing. Kaio suddenly grabs Misao's hand and smirks, declaring that embracing her will not be a problem at all, and suggests they take another bath together. A highly embarrassed Misao screams, calls him an idiot, and slaps him away. Misao sighs while walking outside, feeling too embarrassed to face Kaio or return to the residence. She thinks about how suddenly everything happened and wonders if Kensuke is still being kept at the estate as a hostage. After that, no other clan came to attack and peaceful days passed as if nothing had ever happened. Misao reflects that this sudden peace actually makes her feel somewhat afraid. As she walks up to the house, Kensuke calls out her name. Kensuke tells Misao that people will soon be coming to fetch him home. The young Tengu children watch him suspiciously from behind the bushes, but Misao is glad to hear that things are going well for him. Misao asks Kensuke if the retainers punished or did anything bad to him, but Kensuke reassures her that they do not treat him poorly. However, Kensuke admits that they did force him to recite the book's details, while Kaio's retainers playfully demand that he use a sexier tone, or they will not let him leave. Kensuke explains that punishing or killing him would be pointless, because his clan would simply appoint a new head. When Misao asks if he will be coming to school the next day, he tells her that he will not be going back. Kensuke smiles gently and says that he probably will never see Misao again. Kensuke confesses that he only wanted to make her smile, but regrets that his actions ended up causing her to cry instead. Kensuke notes that Misao cried while watching Kaio strike down Shuhei. He admits that after seeing how deeply she cared for Kaio in that moment, he knew he stood no chance with her. Misao admits that when Kaio commanded her to watch Shuhei's execution, she was absolutely terrified and desperately wanted to close her eyes. She notes that none of the normally gentle retainers stepped in to stop it, making her realize it was a test to see if she was strong enough to become the Tengu leader's bride. Misao reflects that if she wants to be a Tengus bride, she cannot hold onto unrealistic hopes of maintaining a completely peaceful normal existence with everyone. Misao quietly says that if they had met under different circumstances, she thinks they could have been genuine friends, and apologizes to Kensuke. Kensuke smiles warmly and bids her goodbye. A retainer warns Kensuke that his people have arrived to pick him up. Misao points out her handkerchief in his hand, but Kensuke asks if he can keep it since he cannot bear to part with it, then suddenly calls out Misao's name. Kensuke presses a small object into Misao's hands, explaining that he is giving it to her because it might help her one day. He then bids her final farewell and departs. Kaio approaches Misao as Kensuke's group departs, demanding to know what Kensuke just gave her. Kaio takes a look at the item and identifies it as a medicine box. He explains that snake demons are famous for their medicines, wondering what kind of treatment or cure Kensuke left with her. Kaio rustles through a note inside the box and discovers that Kensuke carefully mixed various medicines complete with listed instructions explaining their uses. A worried Misao asks if it is actually poison, but Kaio remains silent as he reads on. Kaio demands that Misao hand over the medicine box, declaring that he does not plan on letting her use such things. Misao flatly refuses and slaps his hand away. Misao explains that always accepting Kaio's protection will never enable her to stay by his side. She declares that she wants to become an active accomplice instead. Kaio is taken aback by her words. Misao reflects that Kensuke left this medicine specifically for her because she is otherwise completely powerless. Kaio pulls Misao into a tight, warm embrace. In the background, the retainers watch them, with one noting that he had been thinking about this situation as well. The retainers suddenly make up various comical excuses to give the couple privacy, claiming they must leave immediately to visit a sick relative, meet a girl, or take the kids to the zoo overnight, despite Taro's futile attempts to stop them. Misao immediately runs out of the house in a panic, but Kaio pursues her, shouting that she is not allowed to escape from him. Misao runs to a grassy riverbank and sits down, trying to hide and collect her thoughts. Kaio easily finds her at the riverbank, causing her to cry out in surprise. When a bewildered Misao asks how he managed to track her down, Kaio confidently replies that of course he can always find her. Kaio reassures her that no matter where she goes, he will always be able to find her. Misao blushes as she looks out over the city, recalling that their recent encounter in the bathhouse was the very first time they had touched skin to skin without any clothes on, and realizing she will eventually have to accept his embrace fully. Misao turns red and hides her face, overwhelmed with embarrassment every time she recalls the memory of their passionate encounter. Kaio steps up behind Misao and gently wraps his arms around her in a warm embrace, pulling her close. Kaio rests his face against her and softly whispers that he is incredibly relieved. Kaio admits that forcing her to watch him execute Shuhei was a vital risk, as he expected her to be terrified and run away. He explains that every demon he knew before struggled because human girls found it incredibly difficult to accept the brutal reality of the demon world, and he never expected Misao to declare her willingness to be his accomplice. Misao listens quietly, taking in the weight of Kaio's confession. Misao admits that she was actually terrified and is not yet entirely used to this world, adding that she also never imagined having to rely on things like poison. She looks deeply into Kaio's eyes and explains that her only wish is to be with the person she loves, and she is willing to do whatever is necessary to make that happen. Misao blushes and asks Kaio if he can wait for her to fully prepare herself, clarifying that she is referring to their physical relationship. Kaio holds her tight as she stammers through her explanation. Kaio bluntly asks if she means the physical aspect of their relationship, prompting an embarrassed Misao to complain that he said it far too directly. Kaio smiles and reassures her that no matter how long it takes, he will always wait for her, but notes that there is a catch. Kaio suddenly tackles her onto the grass and smiles, teasingly warning her that he will still tease and torment her during the waiting period to see if she will eventually beg him to embrace her. As he holds her down, a highly flustered Misao protests and calls him an idiot, pleading with him to stop because anyone could walk by. A sudden kick from an unseen person sends Kaio tumbling down the grassy hill, prompting Misao to scream out Kaio's name in surprise. A young man wearing glasses smiles and remarks that Kaio is still as vigorous as ever, leaving Misao completely startled by his sudden arrival. Kaio stands up and calls out to the newcomer by his name, Tadanobu, while Misao realizes this silver-haired man is a member of the Kuzunoha clan who looks exactly like Shuhei. Misao wonders in confusion if the two men already know each other, worrying that they might start fighting right there. The two men firmly clasp each other's hands in a tight grip. Tadanobu comments that Kaio is still exactly the same, and Kaio warmly replies that Tadanobu is too. As the two men smile amicably at each other, a sweat dropping Misao wonders if they are actually on exceptionally good terms.